So we're having trouble going live and streaming on YouTube. So we're just gonna sit tight for a couple more minutes while they figure this out. But we are not live yet, despite the top left corner telling us that we are. But act as if you are. Senator West, did you have an actual question, or is it you're just testing out, road testing the feature?
Okay, we are live now. They fixed it.
Great. Okay.
Great. No, actually, I really did have a question. I've gone online to try to find the order of today's bills, and I can't locate it anywhere. Where should we go to find what bills are going to be heard in order?
So just like we did before, like I usually read it before the hearing. I think I've got a list here that is get them off, and you can take notes.
It's on the MGA hearing schedule. So that's the order. When you look in the hearing schedule, it has the order.
Oh, okay. So they're all in other words, they're not in numerical order, and that means this is the order they're going to be heard in, right?
Correct. Yep.
Gotcha. Thanks.
It's the tentative. But
okay.
Great. Now we got that cleared up. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Judicial Proceedings Committee, and welcome to our first Zoom hearing, official Zoom hearing of the 2021 legislative session. Today we have 13 bills, and I will read off the order, Senator West, just so everyone has them if they're not able to toggle over to see it on the MGA website. So today, first we'll hear Senate Bill 222, we'll then go to Senate Bill 339. 267 will be third. Fourth will be 109. Fifth will be 132. Sixth will be 212. Seventh will be 32. Eighth will be 291. Ninth will be 181. 10th will be 320. 11th will be 44. 12th will be 118. And finally, 13th will be 264. So everyone should have that down. To our distinguished panelists and guests, our apology, we had some technical difficulties getting online here, but we are ready to go. So without further ado, we're going to start off with Senate Bill 222. I think there's a video incorporated here. I've got a noted here, but I also have, that's it. Do we have a video, Sandy, or is that video in the queue?
So I'm sharing my screen. Can you see it's just a slide.
I see a slide, yes.
Yep.
Okay, and then we have one, so then we'll talk with DJS, we'll have James Johnston start us off then. Mr. Johnston.
There we go. Chair Smith, can you hear me?
There we go. How are you?
Wonderful, thank you. I want to thank you, Chair Smith, Vice Chair Waldstreicher, members of the committee. My name is James Johnston. I'm the Legislative Director for the Department of Juvenile Services, here to support Senate Bill 222, which is a departmental. I'd also like to thank Sandy Pop and Jamie Lancaster from the committee staff who've been very helpful in getting us set up today. We have a slide just to go over briefly some of the key features and the background associated with this bill. This bill comes to us because the Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Act, which is a federal statute, changed. It was initially passed in 1974. It's been updated every year, and it was reauthorized in 2018. And a key change in 2018 was to the jail removal provisions. So right now in Maryland, youth who are charged as adults and who are pending a transfer hearing are presumptively held in secure DGS facilities if they are detained. This bill expands that group of young people to include individuals who are not eligible for transfer. So all youth who are under 18 or pending trial or sentencing need to be eligible to be held in secure juvenile facilities. That is the change that the federal legislation contemplates. We can accomplish that here in Maryland, and we believe that this bill will do that. This bill retains judicial discretion, so judges would still be able to look at a list of factors to consider if they believe it's appropriate to override that presumption and to house a young person in an adult facility. They would be able to do that. They would look at factors like the young person's age, the nature of the offense, any prior criminal or delinquency history, mental health, physical health, and public safety in making that decision if they want to override the presumption. The bill also expands and clarifies. So right now, some judges in some jurisdictions are using, if they wish to release a young person pre-trial, they believe that young person can be safely maintained in the community, they're using the existing DJS electronic monitoring and community detention options. This bill clarifies that and makes it clear that if a judge believes a young person can be safely maintained in the community while they're pending trial or transfer hearing or sentencing, that judge can, if they move the young person to DJS housing, also make them eligible essentially for home detention using our existing system. The bill also has several components which help reduce delays. Right now, we're seeing young people wait on average 3.5 months until they have a transfer hearing. And we also know about 75% of young people who are charged as adults are either returned to the juvenile system or have their cases dismissed. So we want to make sure that we reduce those delays. This bill has several components to make sure that happens. One, the study piece of this, when a young person is charged, judges typically order the department to complete a study. That's a brief overview of the young person's history with the department, their family background, and that's provided to the court to help in the transfer decision. This bill make sure that that study is ordered at the outset of the case. That will help reduce delays. It also requires courts to timely schedule transfer hearings and to keep a close eye on any postponements of transfer hearings. Again, in terms of background and intent, this is required to come into compliance with the federal law. If we do not do that, we risk losing federal funding. That would be for fiscal year 2020. These are funds which are federal funds. They go to GoCap and then they're distributed locally to community organizations and law enforcement. We would be looking at about $200,000 lost federal funding. I think critically as well, we have been housing this population of young people safely and securely since 2013. We began in Baltimore City, housing the majority of these young people through an agreement with stakeholders there, including the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services and other partners. In 2005, Senate Bill 852 was passed, which reflects the presumptive housing of young people who are charged as adults and are pending transfer hearings in DJS facilities. We've been able to securely and safely house those young people in our facilities. We have completed a population forecast. We're looking at a relatively small group of young people. We believe we can house those young people with no additional expenditure, again, safely and securely in our facilities. And we would therefore ask for a favorable report on Senate Bill 222. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. We have, I see a question from Senator Carter. So Senator Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I very much appreciate the intent and spirit of the bill. And the issue of the timeliness of transfer hearings is really critically important. Just this week before session on Monday, I had a transfer hearing. Thankfully, we were successfully able to transfer the child that had no prior contact with the juvenile system or adult system to the juvenile court. He had been held charged since February of 2020. I understand there are delays due to COVID, but I believe that there should be a mandatory time frame for when these transfer hearings should occur. They should occur within a certain amount of time, with no exception, absent, a catastrophe or emergency, extreme emergency. I really believe that, even 60 days is too long. I think that these things should happen timely. So is there any way, what are your thoughts on that and how can we make that happen?
I agree. We absolutely agree with you, Senator Carter. Thank you for the question. So this bill would require when a young person is, when the case goes from district court to circuit court, which is the typical path for these cases, it would require the circuit court to schedule a transfer hearing within 30 days of the filing of that charging document in circuit court. So that's certainly a pretty aggressive approach to making sure it's scheduled. And it would require also, if the case is postponed, that the administrative judge or their designee make that decision. That's the same process, as you all know, Senator Carter, that's used in felony trials and postponing them based on the Hicks rule. So we took a look at that. And we thought that that's a good approach. That way the administrative judge has eyes on it, can decide if it's appropriate. Certainly there are certain times when either side may need more additional information, and that's appropriate to both seek a postponement and receive the postponement. But we want to get these young people into the court system, have those decisions made, and then if they're retained in the adult system, certainly they need to move through that system, go to trial. If they're returned to the juvenile system, they need to go to trial. And if the outcome is that they receive services, we want to get those services started.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Senator Carter. Any further questions from Mr. Johnson? Senator Casserly. Senator Casserly, you just went back on mute. Sorry, I don't know how that happened, but.
Okay, am I there now? Can you hear me all right? We're good?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Sir, I'm trying to make this, and maybe it's just the way it's laid out. So maybe you can just take me through it real quickly so that I'm reading this bill correctly. Because we take stuff, it looks like we take stuff from the beginning and then put it back in at the end. So I'm trying to just put this whole thing together and understand exactly how it all flows. Because when I look up on page 3 of the bill, it says that the court shall order a study, okay, and then we have the section H, which currently says, pending a determination of the section to transfer its jurisdiction, the court shall order the child to be held in a secure facility unless. So all that's stricken out, and I take it that's now all added in at the end in a different format. Is that correct?
Right. So two things, I think. First, thank you very much for the question, Senator Casserly. So the timeframes that Senator Carter asked about, those apply to young people who were detained. So it's less of an issue, certainly still an issue, but less of an issue if young people are in the community in terms of speeding up their transfer hearings. So you are correct that the current language, which requires judges to house young people in DJS facilities pending transfer unless there's a safety or security issue, that language is replaced with what's essentially the test found in the Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Act, which includes some additional factors. So you're correct that that first part goes away, and then there's a second piece which replaces that, which mirrors the federal language.
Okay, and then I may not have any problem with this bill. I'm just trying to interpret it. So, and I'm just get you to help me through it if you would. So then we take on page 5, it brings back in the new criteria, and so now we come in for these hearings, and under these hearings, and is it we're not changing which the jurisdiction of the juvenile court versus a circuit court in this bill, right? That's the same.
Correct. That's absolutely the same. The one piece, I'm sorry.
Well, this is only changing the standards by which we have the hearings.
Right. So it really, on that front, it does two things. One, it allows any young person who is charged as an adult, who hasn't been sentenced, to be housed with DJS. So, for example, now a young person who's waived up from the juvenile justice system to the adult system, there's no ability in the statute to house them with us, even if they're 15 years old. This would allow that. And then the second thing, as you pointed out correctly, Senator, the standard changes to reflect that federal language. And
so if you can just take us just briefly through those specific changes to the standard.
Certainly, I'd be happy to do that. So if we look at the current standard, there are two things there. One is, of course, if the young person is, and I'm looking at on the bill, page 3, if the young person is released on bail, obviously we're not going to consider this. The second thing is if there is no capacity with DJS, as DJS defines it, then the court may not house the young person with us. That's being removed. So we would not have that ability to limit the capacity that we have now. Thankfully, we don't need to use that very frequently. So we've seen housing this group since 2013, really in Baltimore City, and then 2015 statewide, that we have the capacity, and we know we have it now, and we believe we have it going forward. The factor that the court's asked to take a look at, though, the court's required to make a finding if the court does house that young person in an adult facility, that the young person would pose a risk of harm to themselves or others. So that standard is removed. And if we come down, as you mentioned, Senator Casserly, over to page 6, we then have these factors, which are laid out in the federal statute. They include the age of the, and I think they're really common sense factors, and it's a pretty broad view as well. The age of the child, the physical and mental maturity of the child, the present mental state of the young person, including whether they present an imminent risk of harm, that mental state, the nature of the circumstances of the offense, any prior delinquent acts, the relative ability of adult and juvenile detention facilities to meet this young person's needs, and then, of course, any other relevant factor, and public safety is included in there explicitly. So I think the federal requirements there that a judge look at this are pretty broad and include many of the factors that courts day to day would look at in determining if overriding that presumption is appropriate. The standard is interest of justice, and the court is required to have a hearing and then make findings if they do house the young person in an adult facility.
So, and on your side, just comparing and contrasting the current law with these new standards, are there any key standards that we currently have in the law that are being deleted, or any additional considerations that were not in some fashion already in the existing law?
So I think that we have a relatively brief statement in terms of risk of self to others. I think that's embodied in the federal statute. They just include more of a laundry list of things that judges can look at. So right now, a judge can override and house a young person in the county detention center if they think they're a public safety risk, risk to self or others. They can do that now under this bill as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Johnson. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Senator Castelli. Seeing no further questions, Mr. Johnson, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Good to see you in the Zoom room.
Thank you very much.
And with that, there's no opposition testimony, so that concludes the hearing for Senate Bill 222. We'll now move on to Senate Bill 339. And we will have Secretary Schultz. Madam Secretary. I see she may be joining us telephonically. I see her icon down there. Secretary Schultz, can you hear us? See, the audio is still buffering, but we can see you at least. Madam Secretary, we can see you. And I think you're connected. Now we can just need to unmute you. Oh, there she is.
It's a whole new day, Mr. Chairman.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Not exactly sure I know exactly where we are at the moment because I don't hear anything when I'm on hold. So I'm assuming that I am here because you're ready for my testimony.
That is correct, Madam Secretary. We've just switched over to the bill. You're the first witness for the bill, and the floor is now yours.
Perfect.
Whenever you're ready, at your pleasure.
Absolutely. If I could just get myself situated just real quick here.
And then
apologize.
We have Ms. Reynolds. You're next. I see you're there up on the live stream, but Ms. Reynolds was next after you, Madam Secretary.
Yes, and Ms. Reynolds is actually with me, Senator, so she can answer some technical questions if we have any.
Got it.
But I am here today to be able to introduce Senate Bill 339. Very grateful, Chairman Smith and Vice Chair Waldstreicher. And it is, of course, so good to see the friends back in the legislature as we begin this very interesting journey through the 2021 legislative session. You do have our written, for the record, I am Kelly Schultz, Secretary of the Maryland Department of Commerce, and testifying in support of Senate Bill 339. You do have our written testimony and letters of support. As you mentioned, I am joined today by Jessica Reynolds. She is the Senior Director of Commerce's Office of International Investment and Trade. Jessica is on the line here with me also to assist as needed if there are technical questions that I may not be able to answer about the program. Senate Bill 339 is a simple bill. It will align the statute with the budget for Maryland's sister state program operations. This bill essentially completes a process that was begun by the Board of Public Works last summer. At its July 1st meeting, the board voted to eliminate positions in a budget cutting effort and transfer the 2 staff members who run Maryland's Sister States program from the Office of the Secretary of State to existing vacant pins at the Department of Commerce. This was a cost-saving measure proposed by Governor Hogan and approved by the board, and it made sense because Commerce's international team worked very closely with the Sister States program over the years, and both offices had periodically found their activities overlapping. In fact, there is precedent for the Sister States program being housed at Commerce. Until 2004, the program was a part of Commerce's predecessor agencies, both DEED and DBED's Maryland International Division. We feel Commerce is the logical home for this program. So far, the transfer of staff to Commerce has been very smooth, and we now have one unified team working on this program rather than one group in one agency and one in another agency. Overall, this makes Maryland's international activities more streamlined and less duplicative, and Commerce can provide more resources to the Sister States program from our existing international budget than the Office of the Secretary of State could previously provide. However, since the Sister States program authority still rests with the Secretary of State's office, staff does need to keep going back to their old office to complete some tasks and having to do some tasks, such as preparing briefings twice. There can also be a lack of clarity about which secretary needs to make decisions around the program. All this is duplicative and inefficient, but this bill will remedy that. Senate Bill 339 codifies the changes that have already been made official through budget action. It has no fiscal impact, and it will ensure that we can continue using our Sister States program to build strong collaborative relationships between Maryland and other countries. This is good for business and trade. This is good for education. This is good for Maryland culture. We recognize that there is some opposition to this bill, but we hope that the past 6 months have shown that this program fits well at the Department of Commerce and that we have demonstrated our commitment to the Sister States program. You should have a letter of support from Secretary of State John Wobensmith. Unfortunately, our other letters of support from the World Trade Center Institute and a company who joined the state on a recent Asian trip mission did not meet your committee's deadlines by submitting testimony, but we're going to get better with that in the future, I promise. I respectfully request a favorable report on Senate Bill 339, and I would, of course, be happy to take any questions.
All right, thank you, Secretary. Looking around the Zoom room, do we have any questions for the Secretary? Senator Sidnor has a question, and Senator Hettleman has a question after that. So Senator Sidnor, and then Senator West, and then Senator Lee. There we go. Senator Sidnor, you're up. As soon as you get unmuted.
For some reason, I'm unmuted. I think Charles is supposed to go first.
You're both unmuted at the moment, so there you go. All right, go for it. Senator Sidnor.
And thanks for the testimony. I had one question. You had made mention earlier that there was some confusion around which secretary to report to. Is that currently the situation?
Sure. Thank you, Senator, for that question. I think that right now the confusion is that we have a Sister States program that officially by statute resides in the Secretary of State's statute, led by one secretary. And the staff for that program reside at the Department of Commerce. So they're kind of pulling double duties in, kind of referencing both of the secretaries and trying to figure out how to move forward with those actions.
And I mean, the reason I was asking the question, I noticed the language that we're removing talks about the Secretary of State being assuming lead responsibility, and the language that we would that's being asked to be changed is so that instead of Secretary of State assuming lead responsibility, it's your office that would assume lead responsibility. So I'm wondering. I was asking because I wasn't certain if the whole concept of lead responsibility, rather than saying that your department assumes all responsibility, or the Secretary of State assumes all responsibility. That was causing some confusion in communication.
Sure, and I'm sorry if there's confusion with that, Senator. The intent of the bill is certainly to be able to make sure that there is no confusion, that the transfer of the program would be officially with the Department of Commerce.
And my last question, and I thank you for this, I guess, and I've been to a number of the sister state programs in the past, and to me, the Secretary of State is supposed to be our ambassador to the world. Why would Commerce be the most appropriate place rather than the Secretary of State?
That's a very good question, and thank you for asking that. I think that there are several ambassadors within state government depending on the different types of organizations that we're working with. We do have a very robust international office at the Department of Commerce, and we had vacant pins, and because of the work that my team at the Department of Commerce was doing globally with investment and trade on a global level, there was very frequently overlap in the two programs. So being able to bring the sister states employees over to the Department of Commerce and working directly with the rest of the international team that works on behalf of the state of Maryland, there's now a greater collaboration and synergy amongst those individuals.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Senator Sinner. I think Senator West, you're next.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Madam Secretary. Nice to see you. So can you all hear me? It looks like I'm unmuted. Yeah, okay. I'm learning about this program really for the first time, but it looks to me as if each sister state program is established through a diplomatic memorandum of understanding negotiated with a foreign country. I'm looking at the list of existing sister state programs, and there are countries such as Liberia, Estonia, Peru, etc. Does the Maryland Department of Commerce have any experience negotiating consensual agreements with countries like Liberia, Estonia, and Peru?
It's what our international team does every day. As a matter of fact, yesterday I signed an MOU, an extension of an MOU with the Midlands in the United Kingdom. Last month, you may have read that we, along with the governor, signed an agreement with our friends in Canada, in Ontario. We have, I don't know, and maybe Jessica can answer this, the number of individuals on our international team, but we have them, but we also have global offices. So we have regional global offices all over the world. And we partner with individuals within those particular areas to help us with things like being able to connect businesses, but also being able to draft MOUs or subnational agreements, as some areas call them, and also to be able to help us with our missions. And you may have read some significant news about some of our trade missions that we've had all across the world. So I would say the Department of Commerce is the agency that has the experience in drafting those types of agreements.
Great, thank you so much for your answer.
Of course.
Thank you, Senator West. And I think we have now Senator Lee, you are up next, and Senator Hedelman. So Senator Lee and then Hedelman.
Yeah, thank you, Secretary Schultz. I just had a question. You know, traditionally, the Secretary of State has been in our state, but also in other jurisdictions, the entity that has been engaged in creating international partnerships and collaborations, and I've seen have had a pretty good track record particularly with the sister states programs, and they've actually created businesses and partnerships. So I was wondering, why can't the two agencies work together, and which programs, what activities that you have or duplicative that you think that should be together, or that is more appropriate for commerce? And I would think that the Secretary of State's office already has that expertise in dealing with international relations and creating international partnerships, especially with all their previous sister city relationships. I know that that Secretary Smith has done a great job in promoting business between Israel and China and some other countries. And so I was thinking, what has the Commerce Department done that has produced, has engaged in those activities too, that may be, as you say, duplicating the Secretary of State? I just want the information. Thank you.
Sure. Well, thank you, Senator Lee, and it's also wonderful to see you, and Happy New Year. I'll just reiterate a little bit of the programs that we have here at the Department of Commerce within our Office of International Investment and Trade. It's a very long-standing program within the Department of Commerce. So the Department of Commerce is actually the agency that sets up the trade missions with our global partners. So our international team works in every single industry to be able to create those relationships. We set up all of the mission events and the trade events. We get the grants from the federal government for our STEP program in order to be able to create those export relationships between Maryland businesses and our global partners to do importing as well. So Maryland is the business connector, collaborator for all of our global efforts. The Secretary of State has a wonderful diplomatic role, and I know that he works very closely with many of the embassies in Washington, D.C. But I think when they were looking at budgetarily and how to be able to coordinate both of the offices, the Department of Commerce has a much broader wealth of resources in order to be able to bring them in so that those connections can be made on a much larger level with an enhanced set of employees in order to be able to serve their needs.
All right, Senator Lee, are you squared away? Any further questions? I think you have some more questions. You do, okay. Follow-up questions for Senator Lee, if we could have her unmuted, please.
Yeah, I know the Commerce Department has engaged in a lot of great entities to create activities to create more business, but can't the Secretary of State's office function in collaboration with the Commerce Department on?
Of course.
Can I finish my question?
Sure.
Because there's some functions that are, that the Secretary of State has expertise in, particularly, creating those, relationships with the different countries through the diplomatic channels. And so can't you work together? Because I know other agencies on other types of functions, very often different state agencies collaborate on projects for common goals. Can't you both function together?
Well, thank you, Senator. And yes, I did not mean to interrupt you, but I don't disagree that we can work and function together. As a matter of fact, I think this is a great way in order to be able to do that. I think as far as we're talking about governance, though, if the Department of Commerce, through the budget process, was provided these individuals in order to be able to oversee the program, as far as good governance and everyday activities, it would make sense for the program to be located in the department where the employees are working. And so that is the sole purpose of this bill, in order to be able to create that more efficient working environment. The Secretary of State's office, of course, will still be integral. We do have our international subcabinet that we will all still, in the Secretary of State's office will definitely still be at the helm for that. And the Secretary of State, I'm sure, will continue to have his communications with the diplomats in Washington, D.C. and elsewhere.
Senator Lee, To your satisfaction, any further questions or thumbs up? Okay. Senator Lee, do you have further questions? Okay, good. Thank you very much. All right, next we'll go on to Senator Heddleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, Madam Secretary. Nice to see you. I was just curious, can you tell me a little bit, you said in 2004 that the switch was made to the Secretary of State's office, and I just was wondering, why was the switch made at that time? Do you have any sense of?
I wasn't here in 2004, Senator, so I guess historically, looking back at it, I think that there was, I don't know how to say. I think that somebody just wanted to be able to enhance the program at the Secretary of State's office. I don't know the reasoning behind that. We can certainly get you some historical information as to whether or not there, was a bill hearing on that and how that worked.
I was just curious whether there was some philosophical agreement at the time that it was better housed in the Secretary of State's office and more consistent with the duties of that cabinet secretary. I certainly understand that Commerce has a global reach and appreciate all you do to help bring international business relationships between Maryland and those different countries. It seems that the sister state relationship has worked really well, and those relationships have been established over many, many years. And so I was just sort of curious about why change something that's working smoothly and well. Other than, and you already commented on the budget issue, so I don't think you need to go into that further. But if there were other reasons that you could shed light on, that would be helpful.
Yeah, so I will just say, and I know that Jessica Reynolds is on the call as well, and maybe she might want to give some information about what her team is and how closely it is that we worked. I want everybody to understand that there will be no change in the relationships between the sister states. The two individuals who had run the sister states program for years at the Secretary of State, those two individuals are still the same individuals that are running it today. That was the change that was made. So there's no change in relationship. There is no change in any way that the sister state program is going to work. Those two individuals still have those relationships, but they have a broader support system at the Department of Commerce. And if I may just ask Jessica if she has anything to add, if that's okay with you, Senator, on that specific question.
Hello, good afternoon. So the one thing I might add is that Commerce does have, we've mentioned resources, but perhaps we could be specific with that. The State Arts Council, the Maryland Office of Tourism and Film, our strategic industries, the bio office, et cetera, these all are housed within Commerce. And, we have worked with the Secretary of State's office to assist with the sister states programs. These are some areas outside of, your, commerce areas you might think of where being in Commerce, it might be helpful.
All right, fantastic. Senator Heddleman, all good to go? Any other further questions? Okay, great. No, thanks for Ms. Reynolds. Thank you for that. Because my only question was actually the same question that Senator Heddleman had, but then also the cost savings with respect to the pins. And if it's Secretary, you mentioned that the two pins have been moved basically from one department to another to your department. And I was wondering what the difference is in terms of cost, if it's two pins here, two pins there.
Actually, so just Senator and Mr. Chairman, the pins were not moved. The individuals were moved. So the pins at the Secretary of State's office were eliminated. The pins that are being utilized at the Department of Commerce were existing vacant pins. So it's a difference. It's an elimination of pins within state government.
I suppose, yeah. But the actual money allocated to the individuals is the same, essentially. It's just moved from one place to another. So I was wondering where the cost savings occurred. If
the cost savings would occur because there's no longer budgetary pins on the Secretary of State's budget.
Got it. I mean, maybe I don't understand budgeting. I guess if there was, the pins were obviously not duplicative because there's only 2 people accomplishing that one mission. And if they're moving from one, I mean, I assume that you didn't have people already performing those duties within Commerce. So yeah, I guess, was there an eliminate? Again, I guess I'm just trying to understand where the cost saving is if there's a new mission being performed in your department, but that the mission is no longer being performed in another department. It's just moving 2 people from one place to another.
Right. So there would not be a cost saving on the part of the Department of Commerce, other than the fact that instead of having vacant pins, which I know I don't have to address very frequently with with your committee, but with the Budget and Tax Committee, I have to address those vacant pins all the time, and the number of pins that we have overall at all departments. And that's always a very fun conversation to have. So for the Department of Legislative Services, for the Department of Budget and Management, for the 2 budget agencies in both chambers, they seem to think that it's a pretty big deal because having those vacant pins, it still costs something to the taxpayer because those pins are funded. By removing the pins at the Secretary of State's office, there are 2 pins that are no longer funded. It's just not that there's not people in those pins anymore. It's that those pins don't exist. So whatever funding was going into the budget of that one agency, which is not my agency, which is another agency, that is what the Department of Budget and Management and the governor looked at as cost savings back in July. So with that collaboration and reconnection with our department, it fills that vacancy, that very high level vacancy that you want to keep all agencies down because you don't want to have all of those turnover costs, which everybody also says is a pretty big deal. But so we're trying hard to manage that, I guess, in the big picture.
Understood. So therein lies my confusion, just because I was under the assumption that if a pin existed but was vacant, it was not funded, meaning it wasn't, we weren't incurring, taxpayer liability there. But
they are funded.
I will turn to my resident tax expert, Senator Hedelman, who has her hand up, but that's her background. So I think you have your hand up. Senator Hedelman, we'd like to unmute Senator Hedelman for a question or comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to, follow up on your line of questioning as the former appropriator in me. So I do appreciate those differences, but can you also elaborate on other things where you said that that particular department within the Secretary of State's office was eliminated? So there must have been additional costs, or maybe I'm wrong. Were there additional cost savings in that elimination or no?
I can't speak to the Secretary of State's actual budget. I know that the only 2 pins that were a part of that Sister States program within the Secretary of State's office, that expense was those 2 individual employees. And those 2 individual employees took existing vacant pins at the Department of Commerce.
Right, but were there other programmatic costs that were then transferred over to your office from the Secretary of State's office?
I don't know if there were additional programmatic costs that they had eliminated from the Secretary of State, but I can find that out for you.
Okay, and it would be helpful to know kind of what the cost savings were there and where they came from. Thank you.
Absolutely, sure.
Thank you very much. And so seeing no further questions, Madam Secretary and Ms. Reynolds, thank you both very much. This has been enlightening for me at least. So we have an opposition panel, so we'll turn over to the opposition witnesses. We first have up Ardith Cade. Cade, I see, there you are. Ms. Cade, you are up next. If we could have staff unmute Ms. Cade. Ms. Cade, you're not unmuted yet, just yet. 1 second, we're working it out. Our apologies.
All right, I believe I'm unmuted now. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'm Ardith Cade. I'm the Vice Chair of the Sister States of Maryland, Inc., representing all 15 member sister state committees in strong opposition to the proposed action to move us away from the Secretary of State's office. We are where we belong and we want to stay there. The 40-year-old sister state program covers 5 continents. You have a list of those active committees in your testimony, as well as letters from many of the committees. Sister states are formed when a volunteer group in communication with a group in another country requests of the state to be recognized as a sister state. There's a formal review process. A formal MOU is then developed and signed by our governor and the governor of the state of the other community, defining the relationship and the types of cooperative activities the group can undertake. This is all done through cooperation with our embassy of the other country. And most of the activities of the committees involve continuing involvement with the embassies and require careful diplomatic arrangements and decisions. It's very complicated, intricate work in most cases. It's the work of the Secretary of State, has been said, in Maryland, as in most states, to handle most of this diplomatic work on behalf of the governor of the state. And our Secretary of State handles it well, and it is and has been essential to the success of our work. Also, let me make clear, the programs and projects of our sister states are much, much broader than the missions of the Department of Commerce. They may relate to environment, agriculture, education, peer-to-peer activities, rule of law, transportation, human services, local government, homestays, cultural exchanges, health, and yes, as the secretary said, periodically, tourism and economic development. Trade is not our primary focus. Why move the oversight of our work from the place that has worked so well since 2003? We would hope that they would bring back the staff who've been moved to Commerce, transfer the pins, whatever, but they're still working with John on all of our sister state programs. There's a logical symbiotic relationship between the missions of the sister states and the responsibilities. We have been given no reason why this bill has been put in, and we are in strong opposition. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cade. Thank you very much. And thank you, Sandy, for the reminder on the time. Just again, I think, what is it, 2 minutes, 30 seconds. So thank you very much for adhering to that. Next, for the next witness of the panel, we have Mr. Willis. John Willis, are you here?
Yes, he's here.
There we are. I see you there. There you are.
It's good to be with you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Judicial Proceedings Committee. I did submit one-page written testimony, and I don't want to recite that. I just would like to underscore a principal point that Ardith Cade made, and that is, and with due regard to all the wonderful things that the Department of Commerce and its predecessor, DBED, and all of the business focus, the wonderful things they do, Sister States program is well beyond the purview of the general mission of the Department of Commerce. I was part of the drafting of the executive order that created the subcabinet in 2001, and I referenced the current subcabinet order, which was modified under the subsequent governor in 2004. But the Secretary of State's office, and having served as Secretary of State for 8 years, from 1995 to 2003, I can assure you that there's a full range of responsibilities that comes within that office. And for every business event that we might have attended, there were 10 educational events, or another 10 cultural events, or another 10 events of working directly with embassies, whether it was on adoptions, whether it was on cultural exchange, person health issues, whatever. I constantly worked with the Department of State. There's a reason at the federal level you have a Department of State and you have a Department of Commerce. You know, their basic functions are different. And for us to be following pins, sending jurisdiction along with whatever budget puzzle is trying to be solved doesn't really make sense. I mean, I teach government and public policy and at the University of Baltimore and have for decades. And sometimes the form gets ahead of the substance. And I think you need to start, as the committee deliberates, think about where is the proper place for a function, and then figure out the budget puzzle elsewhere. I was a party to, over the last 40 years, Governor Hughes told me one of his proudest accomplishments was starting Sister States program. And I remember vividly the state dinner we had with the ambassador from China, which was a widely recognized event on many levels. And that was, that was a tribute to the recognition of Maryland's role, not just in
Mr. Willis,
state government, but our relations around the world.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Thank you, very much, Mr. Willis. We are now going to move on to the next witness is Mr. Morgan, Randall Morgan. I see you there. Just one moment while we unmute you.
Chairman Smith and esteemed committee, thank you for this opportunity to share my thoughts in opposition to Senate Bill 339. My name is Randy Morgan. It is my honor to serve as the chair of the Maryland Israel Sister State Committee. I serve as a volunteer. I have several hundred Maryland members, all volunteers, meaning we take time away from our businesses and families to do this work. We are nonpartisan in our mission. We are self-funded through donations. I sit on the board of Sister States of Maryland, Inc., which is the umbrella 501c3 that governs all of the Maryland Sister State programming. The proposed bill would transfer the government's cooperation with our NGO. This does not make sense to us. From our perspective, we've been in a marriage with the Office of the Secretary of State for decades, and now suddenly someone decided to replace our marriage partner without explanation. The staff that we had at State were inexplicably moved to Commerce with no notice to us. I understand the initiative for this bill came from the governor's staff, not from Commerce or State, although while the secretaries are obligated to be supportive of the governor's proposal, for us it has caused great concern and confusion. And today is the first opportunity we've really had to voice our thoughts on this switcheroo. Please do not misunderstand me, however. We do want a relationship with Commerce. We just do not want to limit our activities to Commerce. And by the way, the Commerce Department already has a nonprofit organization for business development with Israel, the MIDC, which receives significant funding from Commerce every year. And the MIDC lobbies me, indeed has warned me to stay out of Commerce because that is their lane. And this bill would imply a threat to perhaps eliminating our committee's relationship with the government if it's perceived as competitive. Our programming, though, is not entirely business related. In fact, it is not business related directly. We rely heavily on the Office of the Secretary of State, for example, to engage our student members at the University of Maryland who've taken up the governor's opposition to the boycott against Israel. In 2018, we produced the Maryland-Israel Water Conference, which I co-chaired with Secretary of Environment Grumbles, to address water reuse and water security in Maryland. And last year, we commemorated the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, which with events that drew thousands of visitors to Rockville, Maryland, including dignitaries from over a dozen countries. I own a small business in Potomac, Maryland, providing translation services. I know a company needs to develop its brand and its business through multiple channels. Governor Hogan's open to business brand does not mean we should bottleneck all development through commerce, however. Rather, every branch of government, every agency, everyone involved should be on the lookout for business opportunities. And we find business opportunities, we should coordinate them with commerce. In fact, let us please formalize a new relationship with commerce with regular meetings and programming, but don't please cut us off from the Office of State, or else our non-commercial citizen diplomacy will simply be eradicated by a bureaucrat in the future. Thank you. I would take questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Morgan. We're going to hold questions for this panel to the end. So we have one more witness. So Mr. Drake, I see you are here. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Smith, members of the Senate Judicial Proceedings Committee, good afternoon. My name is Steve Drake. I'm a longtime resident of Silver Spring. I actually happen to be a constituent of Chairman Smith's. And like my colleagues, Ardith Cade and Randy Morgan, I serve as a volunteer citizen ambassador for Maryland in my role as chair of the Maryland Anhui Province, that's in China, Sister State Committee. I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you today on behalf of the members of my committee to voice opposition to Senate Bill 339, which would shift oversight and responsibility not only for our committee, but all the others to the Department of Commerce from the Office of the Secretary of State. A quick look at the history of our Maryland Anhui sister state relationship will tell you why we take and I take this position. The Maryland Anhui sister state relationship was our state's very first and actually the first ever relationship between a U.S. state and a Chinese province. It was approved and launched in 1980, which was just a year after we recognized diplomatic federal relations with China, I believe. By then, Governor Harry Hughes and his counterparts in Anhui Province, codified as all the other sister state relationships are, as a wide-ranging government-to-government relationship. Over the last 40 years, our relationship with Anhui has touched and benefited the lives and livelihoods of thousands of Marylanders and Anhui residents. Certainly, commerce and trade opportunities have been a big part of that relationship. I would quickly say that McCormick and Purdue, among many other Maryland companies, have succeeded in China, due in some small measure to the Anhui relationship. But so too, the relationship has produced many important exchanges and initiatives involving Maryland schools and universities, healthcare institutions, and cultural and arts organizations. On February 4th, Governor Hogan and Lieutenant Governor Rutherford, along with Secretary of State John Wilbensmith, will lead a commemoration of the 40th anniversary of the Maryland Anhui sister state relationship at a live virtual event with their counterparts in Anhui Province. Mr. Chairman, I would like to invite you and all members of the committee and Secretary Schultz, you as well, to attend and hear for yourselves the significance of Maryland's relationship with Anhui Province, which again is just one of 15 across our state, and to better understand why oversight for that relationship should remain, in our view, with the Office of the Secretary of State. In the meantime, I urge you to defeat Senate Bill 339 and keep all of our sister state relationships where they belong. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, Mr. Drake. And my apologies for being off screen, especially when a constituent comes on. We're all we're eating lunch here and trying to keep things moving. But so thank you very much for your testimony. That completes the opposition panel. And so we will now open it up to the committee members for questions. Senator Castley, it looked like you had a question. Was I wrong? Did you have a question, Senator Castley? No, you didn't. Okay, great. Any questions? Senator West has a question.
There I am. I think I'm unmuted. So I've listened carefully to the testimony here. It sounds as if this program is working quite well. There's no problem with the program. The transfer of the program from the Secretary of State over to Commerce is in order to try to effectuate some fiscal savings. I took a look at the fiscal note. I can't find anything in the fiscal note that suggests that there would be any significant savings involved. because the same two employees are still employed by the state. Ms. Cade, you've been involved with state government through your husband for probably longer than I've been alive. Can you give us any insight as to whether or not there would be any significant fiscal savings by transferring this program over to Commerce?
We could have Ms. Cade unmuted, please.
Thank you, Senator West. I have been around for a long time, since 1975. I've been plotting these halls. There appears that there is no fiscal savings by transferring this. We oppose the transfer of the two positions. These are very valuable employees. They're very talented. We like them. In Commerce, they like them. In the Secretary of State's office, we like them. We objected to that move when it was made. And I know that it was 2 positions taken away, but 2 vacancies filled. So there really wasn't any dollar reduction in what the state was spending. And there doesn't seem to be any particular way in which there would be a savings, especially if they're still being expected to work back with John Wobensmith on the work of the sister states when it is appropriate. And so it's just a very confusing situation. We have a 501c3 nonprofit, Sister States of Maryland, Inc. John Wobensmith, or the existing Secretary of State, is the ex officio chairman of that nonprofit. We live and breathe through the Secretary of State's office and have so well. Fiscal savings, I don't see that there's any big relevance here to making this move.
Thank you, Ms. Cade, for that. And Senator West, does that complete your line of questions? Your line of questioning? All right, great. Looking around the Zoom room, I see no further questions. So with that, that concludes the testimony for Senate Bill 339. Thank you to the panelists. And
thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good one. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Now we will move on to Senate Bill 267. And our first sponsor, our first witness is Michelle Farr from DHS. Michelle, are you here? There you are. If we could have you unmuted and we will get started. Good to see you. Just be patient with us as we work through some of these kinks. If we could have Ms. Farr unmuted, please. I think we're ready to go. You know, Ms. Farr, for some reason, I still can't hear you. Can anyone else hear her? No. Can we unmute her one more time, please? All right, you're unmuted. And I think we're ready to go. Okay, Ms. Farr, for some reason we can't hear you. I'm not sure why that's the case. Maybe a microphone issue.
We keep asking her to unmute herself and she's not doing it. I can't. Yeah, so.
Are we going to try this one more time? Ms. Farr, I'm going to ask to unmute you. Hit the unmute button and let's try this one more time. All right, you're unmuted. And let's try this one more time. We still can't hear you. Let's do this. We're going to, while we try to work out the technical difficulties on the back end, we're going to move to the next bill and we'll come right back to you. All right. So we'll now move down to Senate Bill 109. And I think we have, is Secretary Wobensmith available at the moment? There you are. All right, we could have, I think you're unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
There you go, Mr. Secretary. The floor is yours for Senate Bill 109.
Well, Chairman Smith, Vice Chair Waldstreicher, and members of the committee, thank you so much for this opportunity. For the record, I am John Wobensmith, the Maryland Secretary of State, and we're on Senate Bill 109. I'd like to give you a little bit of refreshing your knowledge about the Maryland Safe at Home Address Confidentiality Program that we call ACP, which protects survivors of domestic violence and human trafficking by providing a substitute address and free mail forwarding for those eligible participants to use when interacting with state and local agencies as well as private entities. Through collaboration with circuit and district courts, public schools, the Motor Vehicle Administration, the Board of Elections, and many others, the Address Confidentiality Program makes the location of participants less accessible to an assailant by keeping the victim's actual address off the record, off the public record. Thus, the substitute address serves as the public address, effectively safeguarding participants' residential address from appearing online. The ACP currently has 1,198 active participants. Nearly half of them are children. 20 ACP participants have purchased property under our deal shielding provision that has now been in effect for just a year, and we thank you for your past support in that effort. These participants are now able to own property without exposing their location on the public record. Senate Bill 109 seeks to expand the address confidentiality eligibility to individuals who are threatened and fear for their safety, but who otherwise do not qualify for the protection as they are not survivors of human trafficking or intimate partner abuse. We aim to empower individuals who have received substantive threats of violence to protect themselves from becoming victims of crime by keeping their residential address, again, from the public record. Since the Address Confidentiality Program was established in 2006, several Maryland judges have sought to apply for address confidentiality, but were denied because they did not qualify, because they were not having to experience either human trafficking or domestic violence. Last summer, a state prosecutor and also an employee of U.S. Supreme Court who resides in Maryland inquired about eligibility for ACP participation. They each expressed a strong desire to participate in the program for their own protection. Because of their profession, they feared greatly for their safety and that of their families. Last spring, an individual sought address confidentiality for harassment from a neighbor. In these situations, we have been unable to grant program participation because these threatened individuals did not meet eligibility criteria. Even if they'd been harmed, they still would not have been eligible for address confidentiality because the perpetrator was not an intimate partner or trafficker. Senate Bill 109 would allow the program to protect individuals who demonstrate substantive fear or legitimate threat to their safety. Using our existing resources, we would be able to keep the addresses of threatened individuals off the public record, likely preventing violent crime. Senate Bill 109 also consolidates two programs, the Address Confidentiality Program and the Human Trafficking Address Confidentiality Program. At present, the programs are authorized by two statutes. The Family Law Article 4-519 through 531 for victims of domestic violence, and the State Government Articles 7-301 through 313 for victims of human trafficking. With the exception of the type of victimization, the two statutes are verbatim and share the same regulations under the Code of Maryland Regulations 010211. The Secretary of State administers both programs as one, with the same director and staff, one budget, and no distinction between human trafficking and domestic violence participants. Merging the two address confidentiality programs will streamline citations, clarify the program, and prevent any misunderstanding. Also, I have with us today, I think, I hope she's up, is Ann Hoyer, who is the director of our program and is also here to answer any questions that you may have. Ann deals with these victims every single day, and that includes weekends, and has done a great deal to build this program to where it is today, and has done an absolutely fantastic job. So anyway, I would like to again ask for your support and to support Senate Bill 109.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Fantastic program. So thank you for your work. And I see Ms. Hoyer is here. So I didn't know if, Hoyer, did you want to actually provide some testimony, or were you here for questions? But you are signed up, and the floor is yours if you'd like it. Ms. Hoyer, you're still muted. Just 1 second. I see we've got your visual up, but just waiting for the audio.
Yes, good afternoon, Chairman. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Secretary and members of the committee. I appreciate you all hearing this out. I think it's pretty cut and dry on merging the two programs together. I've been the director of this program. It'll be 7 years in March. And happy to say that we have protected many, many people, a little over 2,000 since 2006 when it was put on the table. So if anybody has any questions for me in regards to the program and how it works, happy to answer.
All right, thank you, Ms. Hoyer. Looking around the Zoom room, do we have questions? We have one question, Senator Casserly and then Senator Sidnor. Senator Casserly, you're up first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For either one of you, so not directing a question towards the survivors of sexual assault or domestic violence or other crimes, but say taking this towards the example that the Secretary gave. I'm an employee of the federal government who I feel that I'm going to be a target potentially. I mean, where does that fit in here? Is that potentiality covered here? I see, because those people are not victims of domestic violence or sexual assault or stalking. They've not been actual victims of harassment and filed in the criminal courts. So how does that process through this request?
So, Senator, it would go through the same, we do a vetting process for anybody who's applying for the program. So the way it looks now and the way we practiced is if you have a viable threat against you. So it won't necessarily mean because you're a police officer or a judge or part of the federal government that you would actually have this protection under the ACP. However, if there was a viable threat against you or your family and you felt your safety was at risk, then you would be a candidate for the program.
So maybe you can just, where in the bill are the actual standards that the Secretary has to consider to say your request is granted?
So we have application assistants that we train across Maryland. They could be within the state attorney's office. They could be, any kind of advocacy group, House of Ruth, again, state's attorney's office, even judges sometimes request that somebody should come into our program. So it's basically, we have these people who actually vet initially and help them fill out the application. It comes to my office.
So I don't want to belabor all this. My question was real simple. Where, just show me the lines, the page and line number in the bill, if you are, so I'm the secretary and I get a request from Senator X to shield their address. And I say, well, you either meet these criteria or you don't. Where are those criteria? What am I looking for? Where are they?
And Senator, I don't know, I can't tell you right now the line of that, but I'm happy to get back to you on that because I don't have that in front of me at this moment. However, like I stated before, it's the same process.
Yeah, I don't want to process because in the original process, you're a victim of domestic violence. It's done. The court said, or a prosecutor said, shield them. This is not that. This is me coming in. I think I don't want people to know my addresses. I make an application to the secretary. What are the subjective criteria the secretary must apply in this statute in order to say, yeah, you should seal Bob's address? And that's different than the original piece of this bill, which said, hey, I got a state's attorney calling in here saying shield this because this person was a victim of domestic violence. This is a different bill here. This is a different law that we're looking at. And I just want to know what the subjective criteria are, because we don't want to just have, hey, if the secretary thinks you should be protected, he'll protect you. If he doesn't want to, he won't. I mean, we're looking at a law here. So I just want to know what the subjective criteria are that not this particular secretary, but every secretary over the coming 10 decades is going to apply.
Sure.
So Senator Casserly, I think if you look, this may be helpful. If you go to page 5 of the bill, line 26, you may find, this may help you. And scrolling down. I'll drop some of that into the chat thread, but I'm sorry to cut you off, Ms. Ware, but.
No, that's okay. So again, Senator, and maybe I'm not articulating well or giving you the right answer, but it is the same criteria if you fear for your safety and you have a viable threat against you. You would go through the process like anybody else. A domestic violence or human trafficking victim would go through. And you would meet with an application assistant. They would help you fill out the application. You would provide anything that shows that, yes, this is a viable threat to you. And that's the criteria, to make sure that you are going through an avenue and advocates. And that's why we rely on these application assistants, quote unquote, that we train, that have been trained in their profession to help you with this application and send it over to us. So if they're saying, yes, Senator Casserly, needs this because he has a viable threat against him, it comes to our office and we do an additional vetting to make sure that that is in fact the case. We would maybe reach out to you and you can articulate the need, and that's
okay. I mean, we're not hitting this because and I appreciate what the chairman's pointing out, but there's nothing here that says you have to go through one of these advocates that I see in the bill. So I can make an application myself, and from what the chairman points out, I'll make a statement that says that that I fear from my subject. I'm going to give you a statement of my subjective fears, and then it's up to the Secretary of State to say, I believe you or I don't believe you. And if he believes me, he shields it. If he doesn't, end of story, he doesn't shield it.
Well, sir, you would actually have to go through an application assistant because that's what we do. We train these people who are professionals to make that first judgment call, and then it comes to us. And we do additional vetting, as I said before.
Well,
I mean, if you go to page, I hear what you're saying, Senator Casserly, but I'm looking on page 6 at the top. I mean, from lines 1 to 5, but I hear what you're saying. I mean, it's not exactly documentation from religious, medical, other professional from whom the applicant has sought assistance, treatments. It's not exact. I mean, it's not just off the street, kind of word of mouth, but I hear what you're saying.
Okay, thank you.
But for the members, if they could check out, page 6, bottom of page 5, 26th on, and then top of page 6 might be helpful. Okay.
And Senator, if you have additional questions for me that I can, dive into and find out more information, I'm happy to do that for you.
Yeah, I'm just concerned about bills that give people unfettered discretion in the public sphere. I realize this is protecting an address, but But you know, there ought to be subjective criteria in a bill, and there's no, and if you deny me, I'm not sure what I could do other than file you know, some sort of a general action in the court to appeal that the secretary didn't shield my address. So, okay, thank you.
Understood. Understood.
Thank you, Senator Casserly. Do we have any other questions? I'm scanning the Zoom room. Okay, great. Seeing none, I think that completes the testimony for Senate Bill 109. And so because of the technical difficulties before, we're going to stick with the next three bills in a row because Secretary Wobensmith, I think you're providing testimony, at least two of them. So we will go to Senate Bill 132, and Secretary Wobensmith will offer you the first slot. If not, we'll go to Kathleen Smith, but Secretary Wobensmith will offer you the floor.
Right. Thank you. I think I'm unmuted. Right.
Yes, you are. We can hear you.
Thank you very much. Well, we appreciate it. Senate Bill 132, which is state government article notary's public disclosure of home address and phone number. That removes the requirement to disclose the home address and home telephone number of a notary public. The change seeks to protect notaries public by limiting the disclosure of information of their work to, in fact, only provide the work address and the work phone number if the notary so requests. If the notary does not provide a work address and a work phone number, then their home address and phone number will still be disclosed. In these stressful times, as we've all been experiencing, we do want to protect the privacy of our 90,000 notaries as much as possible. And I do have Assistant Secretary Kathy Smith with me today, and Kathy can give a lot more details in terms of those specifics on that. So I would ask Kathy to do that next.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Ms. Smith, you are up next. You have the floor. And then Mr. Schlein, Michael, I see you there. So you're next. So Ms. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Secretary. Chairman Smith, Vice Chair Waldstreich, and all members of the Senate Judicial Proceedings Committee. For the record, my name is Kathy Smith, and I am the Assistant Secretary of State. And I urge you to support Senate Bill 132, which, as the Secretary indicated, removes the requirement to disclose the home address and home phone number of notary public. Our interest is simple. It's to protect notaries. The Annotated Code of Maryland, the General Provision Article 4-332, requires that the Office of the Secretary of State disclose the home address and home phone number of notaries upon request. We feel obligated to protect the 90,000 notaries from nefarious characters in today's world, which has changed exponentially since this bill was enacted in the late 50s. We propose removing the home address and home phone number requirement and replacing it with a work address and work phone number. And of course, if a work address and work phone number are not provided, then the home address and home phone number of record will be provided to those who are inquiring. You know, we've all witnessed the ravages of random acts of violence. Notaries often witness documents that may be used in contentious or highly emotional situations, which could make them a target of disgruntled parties. We, really believe that protecting the notaries, their home, their families is really incumbent upon us, and it's essential, especially when there's an option available like the work address and work phone number. And to that end, we just really are being very proactive and preemptive in this legislation. And I urge you to support this bill. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. And then Senator Castle, we're going to hold off. We have one more witness, and then I'll get to your questions. So Mr. Schlein, you're up next.
Yeah, for this one, I'm just here for any specific questions.
Okay, roger that. Understood. Senator Castley, over to you for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So can you give me a single instance of a notary being targeted for serving as a notary?
You know what, I'll tell you, Senator, is that we have had a few individuals who have been like a dog with bone coming back asking for information about specific notaries. And we've had that situation over a number of years.
Yeah, I mean, my concern is that, I mean, I'm a lawyer. We often have to, you want to challenge a will, you want to challenge a deed, you want to challenge any other document that a notary has done. And frequently those documents were prepared 5, 10, 15 years ago. Business addresses change monthly, certainly almost annually, if not biannually. And I got to get a subpoena out. I got to get this person into court. I need to or into deposition. And now you're just giving me a business address. Now I got to go try a business address, see if they're there, and then it come back and establish to you that no, in fact, that business address. Now I'm $150 into the case because my process server went out, and they had to give me the address. They're coming back, and this is all just to get a notary on deposition, or to verify their veracity, or whether they ever saw this document. Suddenly, I've taken something that was a $10 phone call and made it a $400 charge to my client to try to just simply establish that, yeah, in fact, this is a legitimate deed or a legitimate will, just trying to establish that, yeah, this notary did notarize this. So, I understand trying to protect people, but for God's sake, I can find everybody on this conference's home phone number on the internet. And you're talking people who are senators who vote on very controversial things constantly, who were maligned on an hourly basis between Twitter and Facebook. And we don't have, a lot of us have some pretty anxious people. So you're coming in here saying, well, we got to protect the notaries, and we need to kind of squelch the ability for people to establish the veracity of documents, because I'm just not following it, to be honest with you. I mean,
Senator, I think what we're trying to say is we're not trying to squash the veracity of documents or prevent anyone from finding a notary, but rather providing a work address and a work phone number as the first option. If there is no work phone number or work address that's provided, then the work address or the address and number of record will be provided to the inquiring party. But right now,
but the addresses will have been provided. The notary provided when they signed up. They provided both of them, and they notarized the document back in 2008. And since then, they've had 16 business addresses, but their home address is the same. But I've got to get the old business addresses, start running through those, and spend hundreds of dollars to establish to your satisfaction that the business addresses are no longer valid. And I've got all of a week to get them into, or 3 days to get them into court, and I can't do that because I can't even find out where they live. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Castle. It looks like Senator Huff has a question, and then Senator Bailey has one right after that. So Senator Huff, you're up next. Just give a second while we unmute you. There you go.
All right, we're all learning this system, so myself included. Just a quick question. Does this affect, obviously, in the Senate, we have we sign off on notaries and have our provision. Does this affect what we get as far as, obviously right now I receive their home address and their information and, their constituents. So I actually will send them, we do the process and we send them a letter back to their home address. And obviously sometimes I get people who work in my district who are from West Virginia or neighboring states, but, we do use that. We in my office use that information, their home address, in order to contact them.
So, Senator, this is intended to provide information to someone requesting information under Maryland Public Information Act law.
Okay, so this doesn't change us as far as what we get. All right, thank you.
That's correct. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Huff. I actually had the same question earlier on. So,
yeah.
Senator Bailey, you are up next.
Okay, am I there?
You are live.
Okay, thank you. Just one real quick question. In my area, we definitely have some rural areas right in my district and throughout Southern Maryland. And a lot of the notaries that are there, they work out of their homes. They don't have a business address. And that's really, some of these older people, that's their only income, is to be a notary for some of the watermen, some of the different people like that. I want to know how this would affect them? Would they have to then generate a work address?
No. So whatever the address is of record, this just gives other notaries the option to provide a work address and a work phone number. So if the address and phone number of record is the home address and phone number, that's what will be provided. No requirement to add anything else.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, fantastic. Looking around the room, I don't see any hands raised, no further questions. And with that, that'll conclude the testimony for Senate Bill 132. We'll now move on to Senate Bill 212, official stamp of notary public. Same panel. Secretary Woven-Smith, the floor is yours if you'd like it, or we'll toggle over to Ms. Smith, Assistant Secretary Smith. Mr. Secretary, you're live. You're open.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, this is this has to do with the public official stamp of a notary public, and there was language that was effective October 1st, which would require additional information to be contained on a notary seal. And what this bill does is updates the wording in the law to eliminate that confusion. Michael Schlein, actually, Michael can give us a little more detail on this, I think, and the experience that he's had with it. So I would suggest that Michael speak next.
Fantastic. Mr. Schlein, the floor is yours. I think you're already unmuted, so you were ready to go.
All right, great. Thank you. For the record, I'm Michael Schlein, Division Administrator, Charities and Legal Services Division at the Secretary of State's office. Legislation that was passed and became effective on October 1st included some language that may require additional information to be contained on a notary seal, which is now called their stamping device. This bill proposes eliminating one word in particular, jurisdiction, from the law and clarifying the wording utilized by a notary public to identify the name of the Maryland County or Baltimore City to place on their stamping device. Historically, the word jurisdiction, the way we've used it, identifies the county or Baltimore City in which the notary is commissioned. Removing the word jurisdiction will eliminate the redundancy in this updated law and make it clear that the information required on the seal is the same information that's always been required on that seal. So our goal with this bill is simply just to eliminate some possible confusion about the wording requirements on the notary public seal. We want them to stay as they are and as they have been. Thank you.
All right, fantastic. Ms. Smith, would you like to chime in, or are we?
I think you said it very well. Thank you.
Okay, great, fantastic. Questions from the senators? Okay, Senator West has a question.
Here we go. Just very briefly, I wasn't aware that someone who doesn't live in Maryland can be a Maryland notary. Has that been the case?
Yes, someone has to live or work in Maryland in order to qualify to be a notary. There's a few other qualifications, but you don't have to live in Maryland as long as you have a place of employment or practice in Maryland. You can also qualify to become a notary.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Things you learn. There you go. It's been informative. Okay, seeing no further questions, that will conclude the testimony for Senate Bill 212. And I think that is the last of the three. So thank you all very much. Have a good evening and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank
Stay
you.
safe.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, great. I do see that we have Ms. Michelle Farr is back. So if we could go back then to Senate Bill 267, we're going to give this another try. I see you there, and let's unmute Ms. Farr and see if we've fixed the audio problems. Ms. Farr, you're live. Oh, it just went. You just muted yourself again. So let's go ahead and unmute her one more time. Okay, you're. Can you hear me? Yes, there we go. Success. All right.
Thank you so much. Okay, good afternoon, Chairman Smith, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I am Michelle L. Farr, Executive Director of Social Services Administration within Maryland's Department of Human Services. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of Senate Bill 267. Current law requires the local departments of social services to report any preliminary findings of child abuse to the state's attorney's office within 10 days of opening a child abuse investigation. Senate Bill 267 would remove this reporting requirement. The local departments have made tremendous efforts to refine their practice model in a way that serves the child and family holistically. This model includes a multidisciplinary team that includes the state's attorney's office. As such, we believe this reporting requirement has become obsolete in light of the improved coordination between our local department, the prosecutor's office within the local departments of social services, and our child advocacy centers. The Child Advocacy Center model comprises a multidisciplinary team that includes law enforcement, legal services, child protective services, victim advocates, and medical and mental health services. Access to a comprehensive offering of services within one child-friendly facility is critical to the child's health and well-being. Without a multidisciplinary team to coordinate care for the child victim, the child may end up having to share very painful details about their abuse repeatedly to doctors, police officers, lawyers, therapists, investigators, judges, and others. The CAC model minimizes traumatization by having one streamlined intake process that is followed up with wraparound services. With this practice model, the Office of the State Attorney is involved in a child abuse investigation at the onset of the case. Thus, there is no need to issue a separate report of preliminary findings because the local department and the law enforcement conduct a joint investigation in many situations and share the information with the prosecutor at the conclusion of the investigation. This reporting requirement does not serve any meaningful purpose, does not complement practice, and creates an unnecessary procedural step for our local department staff. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify in support of Senate Bill 267. We appreciate your support as we continue to improve the delivery of our services and streamline our processes. I ask the committee to give Senate Bill 267 a favorable report. That concludes my testimony, and I will take any questions.
All right, thank you, Executive Director. So we've got, I think, 2 questions right now. So Senator Castley, you're first, and then Senator West, you're on deck.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Farr, for coming in. So I'm a little concerned on this because it would appear that the intent of the original law would be that in the event that social services drops the ball, that there's somebody from social services investigates and then doesn't follow through, that we don't find out about it because the kid's dead or seriously maimed, that we sort of have a belt and suspenders approach. And while I appreciate that currently you're very confident in the coordination between your office and the local prosecutors and police, it looks like the existing law is intended to make sure that that level of cooperation is sustained and maintained for years to come. So what can you tell me that would make me more comfortable that, hey, I'm sure that my successor and my successor's successors in all 24 jurisdictions in Maryland would never allow some poor child to slip between the cracks and we find that they've been burned seriously and maimed. So I'm trying to understand, so at the cost of a report, and I understand reports are burdensome, but we're talking about little kids here. So just trying to understand why we wouldn't want that belt and suspenders approach here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Senator Cassie. First, let me again just thank everyone for allowing me to testify today. We really do appreciate the opportunity to consider bringing the law up to present day standards and practice whenever there is an opportunity to do so. I would say that with regards to how we are managing our work, the local departments investigate a referral or an allegation until they are completed, and at that time they render a finding. Thus, the required preliminary report as it is now in law is not a comprehensive, and nor does it represent a complete investigation, but instead is meant to inform the state's attorney about the status of an investigation. However, the state's attorney is notified at the beginning of our investigation. And I know that the state's attorney's office did provide a letter of support, and within that letter of support stated that the completed investigation constitutes the only report required by the local state's attorney for action. But let me say this, because I clearly hear what your concerns are about making sure that we are addressing the needs and that no child is somehow slips through and we're unable to address an issue of safety. When we are reviewing the status of an investigation, it is more effectively accomplished during a multidisciplinary team meeting called by any member of the team. And so this multidisciplinary model allows to freely share information on all child maltreatment, physical, sexual abuse, and neglect. And we also have a requirement in COMAR stating that within 5 business days of completing an investigation, a final report is provided to the state's attorney's office by any agreed means, including a report of physical examination or treatment, if performed, of the alleged victim. So there is communication. When we are engaged in our multidisciplinary team process, the state's attorney, the prosecutors are there with us and is a part of that team that is addressing the matter at hand.
Thank you very much for that. That's good. Motion. Senator West, you were up next. Do you still have a question? Yeah.
Am I unmuted? I think I am. Okay. So here's my concern. Right now, the law contains this 10-day requirement. So, so you want to repeal the 10-day requirement of a report. Is there that sort of a short fuse requirement elsewhere contained in the law that that the social services organizations would have to comply with, so that there would be some quick response to an allegation of this sort of abuse?
Thank you, Senator West, for your question. I will share with you that we are required by law to investigate all referrals of abuse within 24 hours and referrals of neglect within 5 days. And we also have a mandate of 60-day closure requirement. And so the CAC and the multidisciplinary team meetings adheres to our mandated requirements in conducting these multidisciplinary meetings and ensuring that all of the partners are in lock and step, if you will, in terms of addressing these referrals.
All right, so you have a really short fuse in terms of investigating. It has to occur within 24 hours. What happens to
24 hours to initiate, correct.
What happens to the results of those investigations? Are they provided to some authority which is charged with making sure that that the situation is dealt with, or do the investigations simply go into a file somewhere?
No, so for as I may have stated earlier, and I apologize if I did not, there is a requirement in COMAR stating that within 5 business days of completing an investigation, a final report is provided to the state's attorney's office.
Okay, fine. That answers my question. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Oh, no, you're welcome. Thank you.
All right, great. Seeing no further questions, that will conclude the testimony for Senate Bill 267. Thank you very much, Executive. All right, great. So now we'll move on to Senate Bill 32. And it's the Maryland Transit Administration Limitation of Liability. And we'll start off with Mr. Quinn. Are you here? Yeah, there, I see you there. And if we can unmute Mr. Quinn, we'll get started. There you are. I think you're live.
All right, great. Can you hear me?
We can.
All right, great. It's always a miracle, right? All right. Thank you, Chairman Smith, Vice Chair, members of the committee for allowing me to be here today. Good to see many of you. For the record, my name's Kevin Quinn. I'm the administrator of the Maryland Department of Transportation, Maryland Transit Administration. Joining me today is MTA Chief Financial Officer Glenn Davis. I'm here today to introduce Senate Bill 32, Maryland Transit Administration Limitation on Liability. And I'm not going to take up too much of your time with the remarks. Senate Bill 32 is a pretty straightforward proposal. It would simply align MDOT-MTA with tort liability limits that are more consistent with those afforded under the Maryland Tort Claims Act. Currently, MTA has no cap on tort liability and is not covered under the Maryland Tort Claims Act. And in fact, from our research, it appears that MTA is the only state agency not covered under the Maryland Tort Claims Act. This puts MTA at a significant disadvantage, especially when it comes to budgeting. For example, over the past 2 years, the MTA private insurance threshold per incident has increased from $5 million per incident to $10 million per incident for our core bus service. And this is mainly due to the lack of limits on MTA's liability. As a result, the overall cost of our liability insurance has increased from $5.2 million annually to $10.6 million annually. Senate Bill 32 would likely reduce the costs of liability insurance, as the bill would dramatically decrease the likelihood that individual claims would reach the current $10 million threshold. Without a cap on tort liability in place, MTA may not only be subject to unlimited medical and economic damages, but may also face non-economic damages, such as compensation for pain and suffering, loss of employment, or worsening of prior injuries that other state agencies do not face. Senate Bill 32's proposed limit of $800,000 per claimant per occurrence recognizes that MDOT-MTA does operate modes of transportation that can pose a risk of severe personal injury. A cap of $800,000 still allows for significantly higher recoveries than covered under the Maryland Tort Claims Act, while still protecting taxpayer dollars. With that, I'd like to humbly request the committee for a favorable report on Senate Bill 32, and I'm happy to address any questions that the members of the committee may have. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Quinn. And is Mr. Davis going to provide some testimony as well? Or?
He is not. He's here for any questions that I may be unable to answer.
Great, fantastic. So we are going to hold questions until we have just the other panel come through. So Mr. Tully is signed up as in the opposition. So Mr. Tully, the floor is yours. Once you're unmuted, there you go.
All right. Good afternoon, or is it? Yes, good afternoon, members of the committee, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair. Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to present opposition testimony with respect to Senate Bill 32. As you've heard, the Maryland Transit Authority, or MTA, is not subject to the State Tort Claims Act. That was a deliberate choice because MTA historically took over the private business of the Baltimore Transit Company, and it's never been subject to the STCA. This is not the first time MTA has come to the legislature asking for this relief. In 2007, a departmental bill was filed in the House, and it did not pass. It did not. The Judiciary Committee, not that the Judiciary Committee governs what this committee does, but the Judiciary Committee rejected that. At that time, they asked for a $1 million cap. The non-economic damages cap back then was much lower than it is today. The non-economic damages cap at that point was $680,000. They asked for a $1 million cap, and that was rejected. 2 years ago, in 2019, there was another bill to impose a cap on MTA liability, $1 million. That was also rejected and voted unfavorably in the House. Just 2 years ago, that was a $1 million cap, and it failed in the House. Now, 2 years later, they're asking for the same thing, but with a lower limit of liability, $800,000 instead of $1 million. $800,000 is not even as much as the non-economic damages cap. MTA enjoys the protection of from liability for non-economic damages that every other private entity has. The non-economic damages cap applies to accidents and personal injuries caused by MTA liability. MTA has not said that they can't get insurance. According to the fiscal note 2 years ago, they have over $500 million in excess liability. And they have that because of a contract they have with CSX, which I presume is to share rails. If this bill passed, CSX's contractual benefit of $500 million in insurance to repair rails or do whatever needs to be done if MTA negligently damages that property would somehow now, miraculous by the legislature, be capped at $800,000, leaving CSX without the benefit of its contractual bargain. It's unfair to Maryland residents. Limit the cap, and I'm happy to answer any questions, but that's my time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I was going to ask you what the policy reason is why MTA was the only one not covered, but you answered that, so thank you for that. I'm looking around the room. Questions? All right, seeing none, relatively painless. Thank you all for your testimony, and that concludes the hearing for Senate Bill 32. So we'll
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thanks. Have a good one. We'll now move on to Senate Bill 291. And Sandy, I have a notation for a video or a slide presentation. Is that correct?
Give me 1 second and I'll pull it up.
Okay, and I see that Ms. Nizer, you're here. There you are. All right. Okay, so Sandy, this happened last time a little bit, but yeah, there you go. So if we could enable content and then do the presentation mode, it'll fill up the screen and it'll just provide a little bit of a cleaner picture for all of us.
It's a YouTube video. Can you guys see it?
We can.
Okay.
Would you like me to do a little bit of intro to the video, Mr.
Sure.
Chair?
While we're working this, that'd be
waiting?
great. Yeah, that'd be great. Fantastic.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Chrissy Nizer. I'm the administrator of the Maryland Department of Transportation Motor Vehicle Administration. I'm glad to be here with you today in support of Senate Bill 291, which would lift a barrier in our commercial deployment of driver-assisted truck platooning in Maryland by lifting the statutory requirement for following too closely for trucks who would be traveling electronically connected in a platoon. Current law allows or requires trucks to leave enough space and following distance for overtaking vehicles to enter between them. Truck platooning is a new technology, although it's been in use for several years. It allows vehicle-to-vehicle communication. That can be done by radar or GPS or Wi-Fi, and it allows the trucks to follow more closely to each other. A lot of benefits come from that, including fuel efficiency, so between 4.5 and 10%, depending on if your lead vehicle or the following vehicle. I want to be very clear from the beginning that there are still drivers in both vehicles, so this is not at all about replacing truck drivers, rather about making it easier for our trucking community, who's very much in challenging times with the shortage of drivers we've seen not only in Maryland, but throughout the country. The truck driver who is in the front seat is the one who leads the platoon and makes the decisions in terms of speed and braking and those kind of things. But again, there is a driver in both seats in both trucks in a 2-truck platoon. I wanted to show you a brief video if we're able to get it up, just because I think a visual is a little bit easier to understand. So are we good with the technology?
I think we're almost there.
Okay.
There you go. Senator Castley, I think you were up there with us. Just reminded me of our time with Senator Norman Wayne. We all went up there. That was great up at Aberdeen.
I should have mentioned that both Chairman Smith as well as Senator Castley are very involved in the connected and automated vehicle group. So both of you have seen this technology as part of that conversation.
It was fantastic.
It was a great visit. I think it might be muted.
Sandy, could you unmute it?
Start it over. Can you hear it?
Are you playing it? Okay. It's very faint. It sounds like you're playing it from a different machine or something.
So maybe what we could do, Mr. Chairman, if it's easier, I could just email it out to the committee members and
that'd be great.
Watch it. I don't want to delay anybody. I know you have a lot of bills in front of you today.
No, that would be fantastic.
Okay, we'll make sure that happens. So yeah, again, this kind of shows you how those trucks are in that close proximity to each other. You know, one of the things that we recognize from a highway safety standpoint is that generally it is driver behavior. In fact, it's over 90% of our crashes and fatalities are caused by driver, just either failing to see something or making bad decisions. And so the idea that we could use technology to help reduce those is really exciting to us. And, you know, having that communication information on braking, on traveling speed allows for more consistent behavior of those trucks. And so that leads to potential of less kind of backing, hitting into the backside and those kind of things that tend to happen when folks are distracted or, you know, maybe not paying attention. Just to give you a small example, platooning technology reacts for braking in 1/10 of a second. And on average, it's estimated it takes 2 full seconds for a human driver. So that just gives you a little bit of sense of how much faster that technology is able to respond. Again, you know, certainly with the COVID emergency, we've seen all the critical demands on our trucking community.
Go ahead and let the next.
I know that Louis Campion from Maryland Motor Trucks had a conflict, unfortunately, this afternoon, but he did submit a letter of support for the legislation. I will say that over half of the states have adopted this technology. In addition to our surrounding states, we're really well positioned with 95 and I-81. US DOT would like to do some pilots with us. And so, you know, being able to participate in that because Pennsylvania and Virginia already have enabling legislation would be a good thing for the state of Maryland. We do have some changes. Some of you who were on the committee last year might remember the bill. It made it to the Senate floor, but unfortunately with the timing challenges, we weren't able to get it fully through because of when COVID hit last year. The changes enable us to, or require us, I should say, to adopt regulations related to the number of vehicles in the platoon, the type of roadways that platoon can be on, as well as requiring the companies to submit a plan before they could even do the platooning. We have committed to the regulations that we adopt will only have 2 vehicles in that truck platoon initially. We think that is the best thing to do from a safety standpoint initially until we have more experience with the technology. So in response to some of the questions the committee had raised, we made those modifications. So I respectfully request the committee's favorable report, and I appreciate your time today.
All right. Thank you very much for that. Senator Bailey has a question. Senator Bailey's new to the committee, so he didn't see the presentation last time. It was great. So Senator Bailey, if we can unmute Senator Bailey. There you go.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And thank you for the brief presentation. And I look forward to seeing the video. But I will have to say there's probably very few of us here in the Senate that actually still have a Class A driver's license and drive tractor trailers.
Yes.
And being from the rural community that I'm from, I still do. And so I am very familiar with driving on the interstates. And my question is, it's never, at least in my experience, it's never been the truck in front of you that is the one that causes the problem. It is the fact of the little car that shoots in between the two trucks, right? It's often not the, not what happens, you know, in the chain reaction. You hear about the chain reactions, but in this situation, how would it occur if a little car shoots in between the two vehicles, right? Even though you have, you know, you see it all the time. That's what I was curious about. What happens between the trucks?
That's a great question, Senator Bailey. Welcome to the committee. Yeah, we see all the time, and we talk to our drivers about the blind spots with trucks because they are so large, as you well know, that oftentimes drivers are just not paying attention or trying to get around the truck because they think it's going too slow or whatever it may be, and that can cause collisions. You'll see a little bit more, I think, when I show you the video, but it really would be difficult for a car to cut in between. But the reason we're limiting it to the 2 commercial vehicles is for the reason that we don't want a long chain of vehicles and then people trying to maneuver around it. So that's the exact reason we decided to limit the number of vehicles in that platoon, at least initially, as we get to experience what it's like to have this happening in a pilot phase.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Look forward to watching the video.
Great. All right. Well, seeing no further questions, looks like that's it. So thank you very much. It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
Likewise. All right. Have a good one. That concludes the testimony there. We'll now move on to Senate Bill 181. Corporations and Associations Trade Name Certificate Requirements. And we have Mr. Webb. There you are. Yeah, I think you're unmuted and the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, members of the committee. For the record, I'm Corbett Webb, Associate Director for the State Department of Assessments and Taxation, and appreciate the opportunity to testify today on behalf of Senate Bill 181. This legislation would require that all businesses be registered with the department before obtaining a trade name, which would come at no additional cost to any Maryland business. Presently, not all sole proprietorships and general partnerships are required to register their business before obtaining a trade name, and by making that a requirement, it would not only improve record keeping, but also solve a host of other problems. One in particular that has become more common during COVID involves small business relief. Some relief programs require that businesses be registered with SSTAT by a certain date to qualify, but some business owners are denied relief because they thought that registering a trade name was the same as registering a business, which it is not. There's no fee for these non-legal entities to register, so this legislation would have no fiscal impact on the department or on Maryland's business community. And finally, resulting from conversations SSTAT has had with the Maryland State Bar Association's business law section, we are also requesting that a technical amendment be adopted to more accurately accomplish the intent of this legislation. And we'll send a draft of that amendment to the committee and staff after this hearing. And for these reasons, we respectfully request that the committee adopt a favorable report for Senate Bill 181, and I'm happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
All right, seeing none, that would conclude the testimony for Senate Bill 181. Mr. Webb, you are winning the room raider competition for our witness testimony today. So
thank you very much. We do our best.
Awesome. There you go. All right. Have a good one. Thanks. Stay safe. We'll next move to Senate Bill 320. We'll stick with SSTAT. We have, is Jonathan Glazer here? Mr. Glazer? And then Mr. Clampett. We could let them into the Zoom room. see Mr. Clampett here. So Stephen, if you could come on the screen, you have the floor for Senate Bill 320 when you're ready to go.
Mr. Chairman, this is Corbett again. I could speak to this bill while Stephen and, oh, I see Stephen now. Never mind.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, we're having some technical issues.
No worries. Aren't we all today?
I see Mr. Glazer here as well, and we'll defer to him.
Okay, fantastic. Floor is yours. So of course we can see him, but we can't hear him, and we can hear you and can't see you. So Mr. Clampett, if you can go first, since we can hear you, that would be fantastic.
Are you able to see me, Chairman?
Actually, there we go. Now we can hear and see you. Floor is yours. Ready to go. Mr. Glazer, you're ready to go.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So sorry about that. So Chairman Smith, I'm Jonathan Glazer, Legislative Director.
And now you've muted yourself now. If you unmute and then start from the top. If we could have Mr. Glazer unmuted, please. All right, I think we are good to go. Mr. Glazer, you're on.
Sorry about that. Are you able to hear me now?
Yes.
Chairman Smith, I'm Jonathan Glazer, Legislative Director of the State Department of Assessments and Taxation. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of Senate Bill 320. The purpose of this bill is to allow foreign corporations to designate SSTAT as their resident agent. A quick refresher for everyone, foreign corporations are any corporations that are not in Maryland. So when we say foreign, it's not necessarily outside the country versus it's outside of Maryland. Current law states that SSTAT can serve as the resident agent for all foreign entities except for foreign corporations. Foreign corporations are the only foreign entity that are excluded from this designation. Foreign corporations must hire outside firms to act as their resident agent to conduct business in the state of Maryland. There is not a reasonable basis to exclude foreign corporations from this provision. This exclusion could be considered to be discriminatory. The proposed legislation will equal the playing field for all foreign business entities. SSTAT can act as a resident agent for a foreign corporation if the designated resident agent cannot be found. This did pass back on March 12th in a third reading in the House, 133-0. This is simply a statutory cleanup that will benefit everyone, especially Maryland businesses. I respectfully request that you support Senate Bill 320, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Great, thank you. Mr. Clampett, if you'd like to go, or if you're here for support, but the floor is yours if you'd like to go.
Yeah, Mr. Clampett is our program manager to assist with any technical questions.
Understood. Okay, great.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So it looks like Senator Castley has a question. So we have Senator Castley.
Okay, thank you. I think I understand exactly what this does, but I'm going to say it in my words, and you tell me if I'm right, if you would, Mr. Glazer.
Sure.
Okay. So currently, if I have a Maryland corporation, I have the choice. I can make somebody a private person a resident agent, or I can ask the department to be the resident agent. But if I'm a foreign corporation, my only option would be to have employ a private entity be my resident agent. So all this does is say we're going to treat foreign corporations and Maryland corporations, domestic corporations, the same. Either one can elect to use SSTAT as their resident agent.
Yes, that is correct. Actually, Stephen, if you would clarify this.
Yes, let me, members of the committee, my name is Stephen Clampett. I'm our program manager for our charter legal division at SSTAT. I think just to clear up a little bit of confusion right now, what the bill is doing is the foreign businesses that register with SSTAT to transact in the state of Maryland, all of those entities types, LLCs, partnerships, limited liability partnerships, may designate the department as their resident agent if they so choose. Statute was not updated within the section of law governing foreign corporations to allow SSTAT to serve as the resident agent for a foreign corporation. Domestic Maryland entities, those formed in the state of Maryland, are not allowed to designate SSTAT as their resident agent. The designation is largely so that if you are a business from outside the state of Maryland, you are not required to find someone in the state of Maryland to serve as your resident agent and to then maintain an address within the state of Maryland. What this bill does is it makes it a little bit easier or levels the playing field by making it easier for all foreign entities to come to Maryland and transact.
So the entity that we normally think is a Maryland Corporation Trust or whatever it is that acts as a resident agent, they would probably cease to be when this goes through.
Oh, well, they are any foreign entity that is registering with SSTAT is certainly still allowed to choose, a person in the state of Maryland, a Maryland registered business to serve as a resident agent. This just gives them the corporations as well now the option to choose SSTAT to serve as the resident agent.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Senator Cassidy. So we have Senator Hettleman and Senator West, and then Senator Sidnor. Senator Hettleman is next.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I appreciate the explanation. I'm just curious as to why this was set up this way. There seems to have been some intentionality to treating foreign corporations differently. And if you could provide a little context for that, that would be helpful.
Sure. So the different sections of the code governing different entity types, LLCs, corporations, were written at different times. In our mind, this is largely cleanup. And the statutes governing corporations were written sometime before those, governing LLCs. And when the LLC statutes were written, they allowed the department to serve as a resident agent. There has not been an amendment to update the corporation section of law to allow SSTAT to serve as the resident agent for these foreign corporations.
Okay, one more follow-up if I might.
Yes.
Thank you. So just following the line of questioning from my colleague, Senator Cassidy, when he asked about this other entity that they register through now, do they have to pay a fee there and they would not have to pay a fee to you?
Well, certainly right now, foreign corporations that come to register with SSTAT may choose to designate a Maryland formed business as their resident agent. This becomes a transaction between that foreign entity coming to register with SSTAT and that entity they're designating as their resident agent.
I assume that's not done with no cost, though. Is that true?
There may be a cost between those two private parties, but that's not a cost that is paid to SSTAT.
Okay, and if you were to do it, would you charge a fee?
Well, we certainly charge a fee. There's a statutory fee tied to qualifying your corporation to register with SSTAT. It's a flat $100, and there's certain levels of expediting services for reviewing that qualification. But there is a flat fee to qualify your corporation with SSTAT of $100.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
We have Senator West and then Senator Sidnor.
There, I got myself unmuted. This sounds like a terrific bill. As a corporate lawyer, I've been dealing with resident agents my entire career, and they're more trouble than they're worth, to be perfectly frank. So I am myself the resident agent of several out-of-state companies. And each year they have to remind me to send them my fee. So here's my question. If this is so good and is appropriate for out-of-state companies just to have SDAT serve as the resident agent, why wouldn't it be similarly appropriate for Maryland companies to have SDAT serve as the resident agent?
You know, that's certainly an option that I don't know if we've considered, but you know, I guess I can't speak to that question at the moment.
Sure. Okay. Well, let's get this bill passed this year, and we'll come back and consider that other part of it next.
Very good. Thanks, Senator.
Yeah.
Senator Sidnor.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I had a few questions as well. You talked about, and if I'm understanding this correctly, a Maryland company we could incorporate in, let's say, Delaware. And under this bill, if they then wanted to qualify to do business in Maryland, they would not necessarily have to pay a fee for a resident agent. Is that correct?
That is correct. And just to follow up again on some of the earlier questions, you know, the fee that would be paid to some other entity to serve as a resident agent, that would go to that entity. That's not a fee tied to.
And you usually cost somewhere between $70 to $130, $140 between those two entities. So, and you all, again, are you all considering, or it hasn't been determined whether or not you're going to make these foreign companies pay for this particular service?
We do not presently charge a fee to have SDAT serve as the resident agent.
And as the resident agent, it's your responsibility. So if that entity is being served with lawsuits and the like, it's your job to forward those suits on to the company being sued, right?
Correct. We do have a service of process unit that passes on, you know, those documents to the address we have on file.
Are there costs there that will be captured? I mean, I'm just wondering. What I'm wondering is why we would take on this cost for foreign companies and not do the same for Maryland companies. I mean, you have a number of Maryland companies that are here that could save great amounts of money if this was available. But then on the other side of it, I think Senator Castley may have touched on it. You may have some companies that are going to lose an awful lot of business if SDAT does it. So I'm curious. I mean, what's prompting this?
The prompt here really is to line up statute for foreign corporations, as it's already written for foreign LLCs, foreign limited partnerships, foreign limited liability partnerships. You know, three types of foreign entities that can already choose SDAT to serve as the resident agent.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
All right, thank you, Senator Sidnor. And with that, seeing no further questions, that concludes the testimony for Senate Bill 320. Thank you both very much. Stay safe and healthy. And we will now move on to Senate Bill 44.
Thank you, Mr.
Correctional Officers Age Limit. Thank you. Thanks. So do we have Secretary Green? I think is in the queue. There you are. And perhaps this will work.
I did not lose you.
No, I'm still here. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you, Senator.
Right. Secretary, would you like us to start the first? Do you want to do your presentation first, or how do you want to do it?
I would defer to you, Senator, to be happy to go first, however you'd like to proceed.
Sure, let's go. Let's go ahead and we'll start off with you.
All right, very good. Good afternoon, Chair Smith and Vice Chair Waldstreicher and members of the Judicial Proceedings Committee. My name is Robert Green. I'm the Secretary of the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services. With me today is Sasha Vasquez, Director of our Human Resources and Services Division. I'm here today to provide testimony on the department's bill, Senate Bill 44, Correctional Officers Age Requirements. Senate Bill 44 seeks to alter the minimum age for a correctional officer hired by the Division of Correction, the Division of Pretrial and Detention Services, or the Patuxent Institute from 21 years old to 19 years old. Senate Bill 44 will assist the department in its efforts to recruit and hire qualified correctional officers, providing them with career and educational opportunities. But it is bigger than that, Senators. It's about workforce development and the future of our profession. This bill increases the department's ability to capitalize on the existing hiring incentives, state programs, including Smart Works and our cadet program, and it ultimately aligns this department with hiring practices in this profession across the state and the nation. Currently, all 24 counties in Maryland have the ability to hire correctional officers at age 18. The state does not. A recent survey determined 14 of 16 responding county agencies in Maryland hire correctional officers at 18 years of age. The Federal Bureau of Prisons has an entrance hiring age of 20 years old and a presence in Western Maryland. As many as 30 states have a correctional officer hiring age that allows for hiring prior to the age of 21 years old. Other states are seeking that change as we are. The department has prioritized recruitment, hiring, and retention of correctional officers, and we are doing very well. Recent numbers achieved in 2020 exceeded any hiring that we had done back to 2014, a 6-year high. We have competitive salaries. We have in place a recruitment incentive. We're streamlining our hiring processes at every turn. And you'll hear more about that from Director Vasquez. Senate Bill 44 will absolutely eligible individuals and assist the department in continuing to increase the number of correctional officers it hires without lowering the bar. But I must be clear, you are not hiring a 19-year-old correctional officer. You are allowing them to apply. All correctional officer applicants, regardless of age, must pass a robust background investigation, which includes a polygraph examination, a psychological assessment prior to going through the entrance level academy at the Maryland Police and Correctional Training Commissions. We've done significant research since we last introduced this bill last year and significant inquiry as we have increased our recruitment. Research shows that a minimum hiring age of 19 has been particularly beneficial to rural areas of our country. It provides a 1-year separation from traditional high school graduation age, and it creates sustainable employment while many individuals are pursuing secondary education in local community colleges. Our academy this year, we negotiated an MOU for 18 credit hours, a semester's worth of education for attending our academy. And we believe that's significant and want to expand that further. Research has shown that career-minded individuals will make a public safety occupation decision as early as 16 years of age. A number of vocational programs in public safety are offered beginning in the 11th grade of school. Washington County, Maryland has one that is particularly robust. We've engaged these programs, but more importantly, we've talked to the students and what their plans are for the future, but also what their challenges are. We would be remiss if we did not note in this country, military service is a career choice that can occur at 18 years of age with a structured onboarding that is very similar to that offered by the corrections field. You can serve in Maryland's National Guard at the age of 19, but you cannot apply to be evaluated to serve in our department. Corrections in the military are both significant agencies offering career opportunities for young adults, wherever it may take them. And according to 2018 demographics report, the Department of Defense and major military personnel are between the ages of 18 and 25 years of age. Changing the hiring age to 19 allows the department to be considered by these career-minded individuals who are seeking to work in public service and want to remain local and potentially serve both their state and a military obligation. Senate Bill 44 will absolutely allow the department to better utilize its cadet program. This change alters this program and it expedites an individual to sustainable employment with a good wage and an exceptional pathway to a rewarding career. The department will continue to be aggressive in our multidimensional recruiting as demonstrated over the past year. Senate Bill 44 adds a dimension to our efforts and is based on prevailing trends, research, and it's a significant look to the future, Senator. If I may be indulged for another minute, Chair?
Secretary, yes, please.
Thank you. You may hear that the hiring of 19-year-olds will result in corruption. Research does not indicate that, nor does it do so within our department. Corruption and poor behavior know no age. You may hear that staff don't want it. I would say that that's very contrary. I've spent the last 5 days from one end of our state to the other, and this is an issue that staff talk about as a potential recommendation for the future of this profession. And you may hear that this is an issue for the locals, 18, but not in state prison. We are all certified by the same body, and having worked in that industry for 34 years, Senator, we do not want to see less qualified people in our local jails than we do in our state prisons. This allows a 19-year-old to apply. They have to go through the same hiring processes, and this is quite frankly a game changer for this department and our profession. I would respectfully ask that you consider a favorable vote on Bill 44. And I'm available for your questions. I think I would like to turn it over to Director Vasquez, if that's possible. Senator Smith.
Absolutely. Thank you for your testimony. And Director Vasquez, floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Smith and Vice Chairman Waldstreicher, members of the committee. My name is Sasha Vasquez Gonzalez, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Department's Human Resources Service Division since November 2018. A year we closed with 160 new correctional officers. Over the past 2 years, my team and the entire department have implemented several significant changes to the recruitment and hiring process. In May 2019, in the region of Cumberland, we held a same-day event where candidates could submit an application, test, and ask questions to a correctional officer. In June 2019, we did a pilot program in Puerto Rico. This program yielded the hire of 40 new correctional officers that started at the beginning of 2020. In September 2019, with an improved marketing strategy, we deployed regional one-day hire events that guide candidates from application through a conditional offer in a matter of hours. With another option for candidates that apply online, they could seek an appointment to come into any of our regions for interview and writing sample, receiving a conditional offer within a matter of days instead of having to wait months. We closed 2019 with 267 new correctional officers. Late 2019, the beginning of 2020, we improved tracking mechanisms and data gathering for the background investigation unit and distributed better mobile equipment to investigators. April 2020 was a game changer, and as a result of COVID, interview, writing samples, and background intakes were moved to a virtual process. In October 2020, we renewed or reinstated our one-day regional events in the Western regions and the Eastern Shore. These events were quickly transitioned into a virtual process as the restrictions for COVID ensued. We closed 2020 now with 491 new correctional officers. A number that was higher than anything that we've hired since 2014. And this is true despite a consistent reduction in applicants every year. In 2016, we received 9,580 applications. In 2020, only 3,800, a reduction of 60%. Senate Bill 44 will add a critical tool to our tool belt. in that it will allow us to engage qualified candidates who were previously unavailable due to simply their age. We have seen an interest in this age group who have wanted to pursue a career with our agency and likely ended accepting positions at other agencies or correctional facilities who can hire at age 18 or 19. The Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services respectfully requests the committee to vote favorably on Senate Bill 44. With that, we're available to question. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Director Vasquez. Now, I guess if Mr. Secretary, would you like, we can play the video and then we'll go into questions.
Yes, please. Thank you very much, Chairman.
My name's April Battle. I'm a lieutenant at Dorsey Run Correctional Facility. I started my career as a correctional officer June 1st, 2004 at MCIW. I was 18 when I started. One of the greatest advantages that I've had was the opportunity to do different things in the department at such a young age. I had the opportunity to work with some really great seasoned correctional officers who kind of mentored me in the direction that I needed to go to promote rank, some type of structure, understanding and how to run the facility and how to be the best that you can be. I think when you talk about hiring someone at 19, you have more of a better chance with longevity. You know, the energy level is a lot different. The girth to want to do more with the department is a lot different. So I think that you'll definitely get at least 20 out of someone who started at 19, as opposed to someone who's maybe a little older and don't really have 20 to really give for the department. It's not the maturity level, it's the willingness to be able to listen and to understand and to follow directions. And I think, like I said, with me, I grew while in corrections. So not everybody's mature, but I believe that if you have them surrounded by, you know, some seasoned officers or people who've been in the system for a while, that will give them the opportunity, to grow in the department. So we can't expect them to come in the door mature, but we, the people who's already in corrections, can help build them to that level of where they should be.
Great, we can, there you go. Thank you for that. I know that we have at least one question from Senator Huff. You are good to go.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. And actually, I think this is a great idea. I'm surprised. I was just looking back. I guess the General Assembly changed this. I thought we already allowed it. And I would just say that, you know, I think it was last year, 2 years ago, I remember there was a problem with hiring, and some folks had the idea, it was not from your department. I think your department was hesitant about it, to do away with the lie detector that we require, the polygraph test. And I think this is a much better idea. And quite frankly, I guess my only question is, why don't we set it at 18 to be at parity with the military? Just speaking from my own example, and I'm very passionate about this, I feel when you're 18, you're an adult. I signed up for the United States Air Force at 18. And actually, they entrusted me. I was a Minuteman missile technician, so I worked around nuclear weapons and started doing that training right at 18. So we trust 18-year-olds to be police officers in the military, to be correctional guards, to go into war and combat. So why would we make it to say, well, you can be a correctional guard at 19 in Maryland, but you know you can't do that at 18? What's the difference there? When obviously we're allowing people to join the Marines and be a correctional guard at 18.
Thank you very much for that question and your comments, Senator. I wanted to be absolutely true to the fidelity of the research, and the research referenced back to 19. In my former employ, I did hire 18-year-olds, and as a select group, the amount of time that we put into them to hire them, we found that they were excellent candidates, and I'm sure the department would be open to a level of a friendly amendment to that. But we stuck with the research that really spoke to the decision point of 19, the transition, and so that's how we formulated this.
All right, seeing no further questions. That's actually, Mr. Secretary, it's, the research that you're citing would be, I think it would be interesting and instructive for us to see some of that, just to be exposed to that. So if you wouldn't mind passing some of that along to the committee staff so we could get it, I know I'd be appreciative, so that'd be great.
We certainly will, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks. Thank you very much. And seeing no further questions, Secretary Green, Director Vasquez, thank you both very much for your testimony and your time today.
Thank you.
All right, great. So that concludes the testimony and hearing for Senate Bill 44. We'll next move to Senate Bill 118. And we have Assistant Secretary McClinney up first, and then I see Ms. Sessa is here. So I think we'll start off with Assistant Secretary, and then we'll get started there.
Good afternoon, Chairman Smith, Vice Chairman Waltz-Stricker, and members of the Judicial Proceedings Committee. My name is Gary McClinney, and I'm the Assistant Secretary of the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services. With me today is Rachel Sessa, our Chief of Staff. I'm here today to provide testimony on the department's bill, Senate Bill 118, Warrant Apprehension Unit transfer. Transferring the Warrant Apprehension Unit to the department's Intelligence and Investigative Division makes operational sense for the department's current and preferred reporting structure. The Warrant Apprehension Unit was statutorily established in June of 2011, allowing its employees to be reclassified as law enforcement officers with the powers and protections of same. The unit executes warrants to retake offenders and to arrest persons who violate the conditions of probation. The unit also obtains and executes search warrants when required. Senate Bill 118 proposes to codify a transfer that was effected within the department in 2015. Statutorily, the unit reports to the Division of Parole and Probation while operationally supporting IID as its mission aligns more closely with IID. The department currently employs approximately 66 sworn law enforcement officers, 39 directly in IID, and 27 under the Warrant Apprehension Unit. Operationally, it benefits the department and the unit for its members to be supervised by a chain of command that includes sworn senior law enforcement management. Additionally, the unit's role is expanded to serve both Division of Corrections and our Human Resource Division. Specifically, members of the unit assist with apprehending individuals who walk off or abscond from the department's home detention program, serving indictments and providing warrant service during special operations, and serving certain papers on certain departmental employees after separation from the agency. The unit's officers are assigned to various state and local warrant task forces throughout the region and assist in handling of interstate extradition of parole violators. As you are aware, the past year has had significant challenges. We commend all of our staff for the work they have done and the efforts they make on a daily basis. We are truly proud of the hard and tireless work of the women and men of this department for their dedication to keeping our community safe. The Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services urges a favorable report on Senate Bill 118. With that, we are available to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Sessa, are you here for support or providing testimony?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, Rachel Sessa, Chief of Staff for the department. Just to put a fine point on it, this bill, the Warrant Apprehension Unit is currently in statute within the Division of Parole and Probation. And this bill simply streamlines a transfer that took place operationally several years ago within the chain of command of the Special Operations Group. So it's more aligned to fit within our IID group. And we urge a favorable committee vote, and we appreciate your time.
Great. Thank you. I think I saw a question from Senator Hettleman. Do you still have a question? No? Okay. Any further questions? Senator Sidnor has a question.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. Question, I think for the past two sessions, there have been a group of parole and probation officers that have been looking for the right to, I guess, carry weapons. And is this bill related to? It's different. Okay, thank you.
It's a very vigorous no, right?
Yeah, thank you, Senator, for the question. Just to clarify for individuals that may not be able to see my image at this particular time or be able to stream the video and only get audio. Senator Sidnor, I believe you're referring to a bill that was impactful for the home detention unit, and this is the warrant apprehension unit. So they are two different animals. And thank you for that.
Thank you for that clarification. And seeing no further questions, thank you both very much. And that concludes the testimony in the hearing for Senate Bill 118. We will now move on to our final bill of the day, which is Senate Bill 264. And we will start off with Ms. Danner.
Yes, good afternoon, Chair Smith and Vice Chair Waldstreicher and members of the Judicial Proceeding Committee. Thank you today for giving me the opportunity to testify in support of Senate Bill 264. My name is Martha Danner, and I am the Director of the Division of Parole and Probation. And with me today is Bruce Gerber, Administrator of the Division's Collaborative Offender Management and Forced Treatment Containment Teams, known as COMET, and Stuart Nathan, Assistant Attorney General. We are here today to provide testimony on the department's bill, Senate Bill 264, Lifetime Sexual Offender Supervision. The department is tasked with overseeing the Division of Parole and Probation, which supervises individuals in the community, including convicted sexual offenders. Clients under supervision who have been convicted of a sex offense are supervised by a parole and probation agent who is a member of the COMET team, and we refer to them as COMET agents. This bill enhances the COMET agent's ability to supervise sex offenders who are on lifetime supervision. It provides the necessary guidance to agents as to exactly what the process should be to violate a lifetime sexual offender if they do not comply with the terms of their supervision. Specifically, the process as proposed by Senate Bill 264 would clarify that a supervision agent must report a knowing or willful violation of the terms of an offender's lifetime supervision to the state's attorney's office for the jurisdiction in which the sentence was imposed. The bill then would clarify that the judge who originally imposed the lifetime supervision order must conduct a hearing for the violation of a condition of supervision. If the sentencing judge is unable to conduct the hearing, then another judge would conduct the violation hearing. The bill also clarifies the process by which sex offenders sentenced to serve lifetime supervision may have their petition for discharge from their supervision status reviewed by the court. Consideration of the petition must include a report from the sexual offender management team containing a risk assessment of the petitioner, a polygraph examination, and a recommendation from the team regarding the discharge from lifetime supervision. Supervising agents currently utilize risk assessments and polygraphs to supervise convicted sex offenders. However, the outcome of these tools is not considered as part of the discharge process under law. Additionally, agents have incredible knowledge and insight about the offender's behavior, and their recommendations should be considered when presented with a petition for discharge. Senate Bill 264 requires notification to the victim or victim's representatives who has requested victim notification that a petition for discharge has been filed and the final decision of the petition. The adjudicating judge must make his or her finding on the record that the petitioner is no longer a danger to others. Senate Bill 264 establishes a process by which the court may review a petition for discharge and any supporting documents and make a determination without a hearing. When a decision is made without a hearing, notification must be made to the state's attorney, and the state's attorney may request a hearing, which the court shall hold. Finally, Senate Bill 264 calls for a 2-year waiting period for reapplication for a petitioner who is denied a discharge from lifetime supervision. As you are aware, the past year has presented significant challenges for all of us. And we here at the department commend all of our staff as public safety professionals for the work that they have done and the efforts they make on a daily basis in supervising individuals on community supervision. We are truly proud of the hard and tireless work of the women and men of this department for their dedication to keeping our community safe and believe Senate Bill 264 supports their work. As the Director of Parole and Probation, I recommend this bill be passed as it gives the agency ability to request a violation hearing for an individual under lifetime supervision who is not in compliance with their supervision order. This bill also allows a further review for sexual offenders who apply to be discharged from lifetime supervision by requiring a risk assessment, polygraph, and a favorable recommendation by the sexual offender management team for a lifetime sexual offender to be discharged from their supervision order. The Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services respectfully requests the committee to vote favorably on Senate Bill 264. Now with that, I would like to turn this over to our administrator for the comment teams, Bruce Gerber.
All right, thank you. If we could have Mr. Gerber's microphone unmuted, please.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. There you go.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chairman Smith, members of the committee. My name is Bruce Gerber. I'm the administrator for the comment containment teams that operate throughout Maryland to supervise convicted sexual offenders. Team members include specialized parole and probation agents, sex offender treatment providers, polygraph examiners, law enforcement officers, prosecutors, and others. This bill originated in the work of the Maryland Sex Offender Advisory Board in the course of carrying out its charge to review the effectiveness of the state's laws and practices concerning sexual offenders. Recommendations were assembled from suggestions made by criminal supervision and corrections officials, police agencies, the treatment community, state's attorneys, public defenders, victim advocates, and others. Collectively, they identified several flaws in the lifetime supervision law, excuse me, and drafted this bill to address them. When the board began working on this issue, there were no lifetime supervision cases being supervised, since in Maryland, lifetime sexual supervision does not begin until all other kinds of supervision have ended. Now, however, we have nearly 200 lifetime supervision offenders in our communities, which adds a greater urgency to this effort. As these cases become active, our comment agents are beginning to encounter the real impact of those identified flaws. For guidance and assistance in coming to how does one write a sex offender for not reported or bad included on conditions of time supervision? If an offender has committed an infraction for which he can be cited, to whom should the violation be reported and how, and who will adjudicate the violation case? An offender who adjusts well under lifetime supervision can petition to be discharged after 5 years. But how will the comment team know when a court needs a recommendation report? What information should be included in that report? Who should provide that information? These are the kinds of questions our agents are asking as they supervise these challenging, high-risk, high-impact cases. This bill is an effort to provide the answers. Thank you. And we'll be happy to answer any questions at this point.
All right, thank you very much. We do have one more witness signed up. There we go, Mr. Nathan. There you go.
Chairman Smith, Vice Chair, Wald Stryker, members of the committee. My name's Stuart Nathan, Assistant Attorney General and Principal Counsel for the department. I'm here in case there were any legal questions that you might have on the bill.
Okay, great. Well, thank you all for your testimony. Looking around the room, I have Senator Castley and Senator West after that. Senator Castley, you're up next.
There you go. Thank you very much. Mr. Nathan, I guess thanks for coming. My question is really spot on here for you. I don't want to waste your time for being here, so I'll give you one. So the part I find interesting is the last page of the bill on the polygraph examination requirement. Is that unique in state law? I'm just not familiar with any petition for any relief that would include a requirement for a polygraph examination. Is there something I could look to that? Is there any kind of precedent for that to give me a little bit level of comfort?
What I can say is the polygraph requirement is, in my experience, is unique to this law because it's specifically set out as one of the possible conditions for those who are placed on lifetime sexual offender supervision. So that it is something that is kind of unusual for this type of a violation. I don't know if Mr. Gerber has any more experience, but to my knowledge, this is one of a kind for this type of a violation.
So are you saying that currently folks on this lifetime supervision are already subject to polygraph?
That may be one of the conditions that the person is placed on when placed on the lifetime sexual offender supervision.
That's allowed by statute already.
Yes. And this is a requirement that for a petition for discharge, there would be a polygraph examination also.
Right. Well, that's pretty revolutionary that we were doing polygraphs for anything and accepting them in a court of law for petition. Okay.
Right. Yes.
Thanks.
All right, thanks, Senator Castley. Senator West, you're up next.
There we go. I keep trying to unmute myself. I noted earlier that I had known Ardith Cade for a very long period of time. I note here that I have known Stuart Nathan for an even longer period of time. Stuart and I were in the same high school class together. He spent his entire career in public service. And I've got to say, he's an incredible public servant. And we're so glad, we're so lucky the state of Maryland has people like Stuart serving in public service. Thank you.
Thank you for those incredibly kind words. Yes, it's great to go back to high school days. Remember them.
That's great. It's small state, but that's great. Well, thank you for your testimony and thank you for your expertise. I don't see any further questions. So with that, I just want to say thank you, and that would conclude the testimony for Senate Bill 264 and our hearings for the day. So JPR, it's light speed time. We're not even 3 o'clock yet. We're already done. So I just want to say thank you all for participating, and we'll work out the kinks for our next round of hearings. But I thought this went pretty well, and so it's good to see you all on screen, and we will be in touch. So have a good evening.
You too.